If their family members are watching this right now, what do you say to them? Look into the camera right now, and if they're watching, what do you say to them?
I'm sorry for their loss, and I hope that you can find it in your heart to forgive me. And I'm so sorry, and I never wanted this to happen.
In the serene, picturesque town of Jupiter, Florida, the rhythm of daily life was about to be upended in the most unimaginable way. The quiet coastal community was accustomed to peaceful evenings, with its sun-kissed shores and friendly residents. For Austin Haroff, a 19-year-old sophomore at Florida State University, the night of August 15, 2016, started like any other.
How's it going, guys? Nothing in life worth having is easy. Remember that, guys. You remember that? You remember that?
Known for his easygoing demeanor, Austin was a typical college student, good-natured, sociable, and always looking to enjoy life. Yet behind this persona, something darker was brewing in Austin's mind. That evening, Austin casually told his family he was going to hang out with friends, but there was a strange tension in the air.
Young man beating up a woman across the street.
Okay, are they outside or in a house?
It's in a garage.
Okay, can you tell if he has any weapons?
I think he had a knife, but I'm not positive.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm about to perform Hound Dog by Elvis Esquire Presley. You know, the king. All right, thank you very much, and prepare to listen.
His words seemed off, as though he were hiding something. His mother, speaking about the hours before the incident, later recalled that Austin was acting oddly, even though nothing overtly alarming had happened. After a few hours with no word from him, his family grew concerned.
You called 911 later on that night, and you said that he was missing.
It was not like him to disappear without so much as a text. A simple, "I'm okay," was something they had come to expect. But on this night, that reassurance was missing. By the time the sun had set, the Haroff family's worst nightmare was beginning to unfold.
Hello, bros. It's Austy Frosty, man, and today I want to talk about personal trainers and why you should be cautious when following a personal trainer. First off, a personal trainer doesn't have the same body as you. That's the first point, okay? Personal trainers are themselves, and they found out what worked for them. They went through the trial and error. They did their research. And a lot of them don't even look good, man. That's the funny part, man. You gotta listen to the personal trainer's advice. But you gotta find your way too, man. You gotta learn for yourself. You can't just hope and pray that someone is just gonna give you all the resources that you need, because it's just not gonna happen, man.
Austin Haroff, a 19-year-old former Florida State University student, had been experiencing a downward spiral in his life. Once described as a gentle and well-behaved young man with good grades, Haroff's behavior had become increasingly erratic in the weeks leading up to that fateful night.
I'm not a scientist, bro. But I know how stuff works. I mean, you can call me God if you want to. The God of fitness.
His parents, Mina and Wade Haroff, had grown concerned about his mental state and were in the process of arranging a mental health evaluation for him.
Well, how's life?
It's tough on us, Austin. We're not used to this.
Am I gonna be okay?
Yeah, you're gonna be okay.
How's
Are they
Jupiter?
taking care? Are you taking your medicines?
Yeah, I'm taking my medicine.
You need to get a Bible, Austin.
I know. I asked for one.
Do you have one?
Are you getting me a therapist or anything?
Yes, I plan on it.
Little did they know, their son was on the brink of committing a heinous crime that would leave a community in shock and forever change the lives of those involved. At 9 p.m., as Austin's family began to worry about his whereabouts, an entirely different nightmare was taking place just down the street. John Stevens and his fiancée, Michelle Miskin, were preparing for bed. It was a typical Tuesday night for the couple, who lived in a modest, comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood. They had no reason to suspect that this peaceful evening would be their last. The night was warm, and the sound of crickets and rustling leaves filled the air. But that calm atmosphere was shattered when, at precisely 9 p.m., a neighbor out walking his dog made a disturbing discovery. As he strolled past the Stevens home, he glanced through the bushes and saw what he first thought was a bizarre and grotesque scene. A young man, hunched over a person on the ground, seemingly engaged in some sort of strange behavior. The more the neighbor looked, the more he realized with horror what was happening. Austin Haroff, a figure he recognized from the neighborhood, was literally gnawing on the face of another human being, Michelle Miskin. The sight of it was so shocking that, for a moment, the neighbor froze in disbelief. Was he seeing this right? Was this a nightmare come to life? This was no random attack. This was something far darker. The neighbor instinctively began rushing toward the scene, his heart pounding in his chest. But as he moved closer, Austin suddenly looked up. His eyes were wide, glazed over in a vacant, almost primal manner. His expression lacked any sign of humanity, replaced instead by an eerie emptiness. There was no recognition, no sense of remorse, just an unfeeling stare. A chill ran down the neighbor's spine as he realized the danger he was in. Austin, now completely disconnected from any semblance of rationality, stood up slowly, his body tense and rigid. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. It gleamed menacingly in the dim light of the street lamp above them. "Stay back!" the neighbor shouted, trying to retreat, but it was too late. Austin moved with lightning speed, closing the distance between them. The knife came down in a swift, erratic motion. The neighbor instinctively raised his arms to protect himself, but it wasn't enough. He felt the sharp sting of the blade slice across his forearm. Blood poured from the wound, soaking his clothes, but he didn't stop. Every ounce of adrenaline in his body screamed at him to run, to escape before it was too late. "Help! Someone, please!" he yelled, his voice breaking. In his panic, the neighbor staggered backward, trying desperately to find safety. But Austin followed, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. Every time the neighbor thought he had gained distance, Austin would advance again, his eyes never leaving him. The neighbor managed to stumble backward to the corner of the street, where he collapsed into the arms of another neighbor, gasping for breath. He's eating her face," he managed to choke out. His words seemed to make no sense, yet the horror of what he had witnessed was undeniable. The brutal, senseless attack would haunt him for the rest of his life. The 911 call that followed was raw, panicked, and filled with confusion. The neighbor, his voice shaking, barely managed to explain the horror he had just witnessed.
Don't open that. Don't open that.
Fire rescue, what's your address?
Young man beating up a woman across the street.
Okay, are they outside or in a house?
It's in a garage.
Okay, can you tell if he has any weapons?
I think he had a knife, but I'm not positive.
Okay, can you tell if she's injured or he's injured?
Say again?
Are either of them injured? Can you tell from where you are?
Yes, there's a girl laying on the ground. He beat her up. I ran over there. I'm bleeding profusely here at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
All right, can you tell if she's conscious or is she unconscious?
Say again?
Can you tell if she's conscious?
No, it does not appear so, no.
Okay, and what kind of injuries do you have?
I've been stabbed in the back.
With a knife? And where is he? Is he
I think
in
he's
the area
in the garage, right across the street from my house.
"There's a man attacking a woman," he cried, barely able to catch his breath. "I don't know him. He's stabbing me." His words were frantic. Each one rushed in an attempt to get help before it was too late.
Sir, what did the guy look like? Was he white, black, Hispanic?
He is white.
You know how old he is?
About 25 years old.
And what was he wearing?
Shorts and a t-shirt.
Do you know who he is?
I have no idea.
Does he live at that house, or?
No, he does not.
And you said you definitely saw a knife, and that's what he hit you with in the back?
No, I did not see it, but my wife's looking at my back, and it appears I got punctured.
Yes, Dad. In the neck, in the head, three puncture wounds.
Okay, we got units en route, okay?
Okay.
All right, just call us back if anything changes, all right?
All right, I'm bleeding pretty bad. So
Okay,
please
we got an ambulance and everybody en route. Just stay right there and stay calm, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right.
The operator, trained to stay calm in chaotic situations, tried to reassure him, but the terror in the man's voice was impossible to ignore. "Stay with me, sir. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw." "Is the attacker still there?" the operator asked. There was a pause, a long, drawn-out silence, before the neighbor's trembling voice came through again. He's eating her face. Please, hurry, please." The operator's voice grew more urgent as they gathered as much information as possible, but there was little they could do from their end, other than dispatch officers and paramedics to the scene. As the minutes passed, the situation deteriorated further. The sounds of police sirens grew closer, but with each second that passed, the hope of saving Michelle faded. The community, which had once been a tranquil haven, was now grappling with the reality of a crime so violent and unthinkable that it felt like a scene straight out of a horror movie. In the home of John Stevens and Michelle Miskin, the scene was utterly horrific. The initial attack was brutal, but the extent of Michelle's injuries was more gruesome than anyone could have imagined. The marks left by Austin were savage. Her face, once a defining feature of her beauty, had been torn apart, torn open with unnatural force. John, who had tried to protect her, bore the brunt of the attack as well. His body was found not far from Michelle's, and the sheer violence of the assault left no room for survival. The first responders arrived at the scene to find a bloodbath. No attempt at understanding the brutality could have prepared them for the carnage they encountered. Michelle was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but the injuries were too extensive. The doctors fought desperately to save her, but Michelle succumbed to her injuries hours later. John's death was confirmed almost immediately. Neighbors, friends, and even the police, still in shock, had difficulty processing the violent, random act that had claimed 2 lives. John and Michelle had been pillars of the community, generous, kind, and well-liked by all. They had no enemies. No one could fathom why they were chosen to be the victims of such a horrific crime. The investigation into the horrific murders of John Stevens and Michelle Miskin began immediately after the 911 call was made. What initially seemed like an ordinary case quickly spiraled into something far more sinister. When police arrived at the scene, they found John Stevens' body near the front door, brutally attacked with signs of extreme violence. Michelle Miskin's body was discovered in a nearby room, also showing similar signs of a savage assault. Both victims had been mauled beyond recognition, their injuries so severe that it was unclear at first how they had died. As investigators combed through the crime scene, the initial shock began to give way to more chilling questions. What had driven a young man, seemingly out of nowhere, to commit such a violent and senseless act? The answer came in pieces. Austin Haroff, the 19-year-old suspect, was soon identified as the person responsible for the murders. His location was quickly traced, and he was found near the scene, incoherent and covered in blood, disoriented but seemingly unaware of the magnitude of his actions. When police tried to question Austin, they were met with bizarre responses. He appeared confused and out of touch with reality, with no recollection of the events leading to the deaths of his parents' friends. He had been acting strangely in the days leading up to the murders, withdrawn, erratic, and even reportedly hearing voices. Family members told authorities that Austin had been suffering from mental health issues, but no one could have predicted that it would escalate to such violence. As the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that Austin had been using a combination of drugs, including hallucinogens like flakka, a synthetic stimulant known to cause extreme aggression and delusions in those who take it. However, the defense team later argued that Austin's mental state was significantly compromised by his underlying mental illness, not just drug use. They suggested that he might have been in the midst of a psychotic episode triggered by the drugs, but with an underlying, undiagnosed mental disorder exacerbating the situation. The evidence, including Austin's erratic behavior and incoherent statements to police, suggested a level of mental disturbance that would later become a central element in his defense. Investigators also uncovered disturbing texts and social media posts in the days before the attack, where Austin had expressed feelings of paranoia and the belief that he was being controlled by dark forces. The chilling aspect of this investigation was how Austin seemed to have disconnected from reality entirely, and it raised more questions about his mental health history. Forensic experts confirmed the brutal nature of the crime, stating that the injuries inflicted on the victims were not just random acts of violence, but appeared to be motivated by a deep-seated rage. The mutilation of the bodies was unlike anything seen in typical violent crimes. Investigators were left wondering if Austin had planned this attack or if it was a moment of uncontrollable insanity. They would later have to reconcile Austin's actions with his psychological state, as the line between murder and mental illness became increasingly blurred. The case prompted a wave of local and national attention, as the details of the investigation and the young man's mental health struggles were revealed. For the community of Jupiter, the investigation's conclusion was both heartbreaking and unsettling. How could someone so young, with so much promise, spiral into such violence? The question would linger long after the investigation ended. As Austin was escorted to the police station, his erratic behavior only deepened the mystery. His mind appeared to be miles away, lost in some unknown fog. His family, shocked and heartbroken by what their son had done, began to come forward with more information. They explained that Austin had been battling mental health issues for years, although he had never shown signs of being violent. His mother, in particular, seemed to struggle with understanding what had happened. She explained that just days before the incident, Austin had been unusually withdrawn, but had seemed perfectly normal otherwise. He had no history of criminal behavior, no signs of violence in his past.
You called 911 later on that night, and you said that he was missing.
Well, I guess when he took off the second time, they called me. I don't know when they called me and said, "Is Austin there?" And I said, "No. What happened?" "Well, he took off again."
You mentioned on your 911 call that he's acting schizophrenic. Is there any history in your family of schizophrenia on your side of the family? Any sign of mental illness on your side of the family?
I mean, we always teased that my brother was,
But did he ever get treated?
No.
No medicine? What about your son? Did you ever treat him for any?
No.
No? Okay. Also in your 911 call, they asked you if he's on drugs, and you had mentioned that, yes, he has been on drugs, but you don't know if he's been on drugs lately. Do you know what kind of drugs he was on?
I mean, I know he did marijuana.
Okay. Did he do
and
an excessive amount, or was it just social, if you could even call it social? Or?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I mean,
Okay.
he hung out in his room.
Okay.
So
Dad said that about 2 months ago he also found him doing mushrooms. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know if anybody found him doing mushrooms.
Your son, how was he as a kid? I mean, he still is a kid, but was he always happy, joyous,
Yes.
good as far as you could tell? Never got into fights in school? Has he ever been suspended from school or anything? No, nothing. Okay.
Nothing. I mean, it's never really any anger issues. Maybe, Bud and I have our spats and stuff,
like
but
any
he
normal
wants to
kid.
protect me, you know.
Sure. Has he ever got physical with Dad, or?
Dad?
Yeah.
No.
No.
But as the police dug deeper into Austin's psychological history, they discovered that he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and had been struggling with his mental health for years. Was this an act of pure madness, or had Austin been suffering from something more sinister, an external influence or mental disturbance that led him to commit the unimaginable? As the court proceedings began, the defense team argued that Austin Haroff was not mentally competent to stand trial, given his history of mental illness. His attorney's case was built on the idea that Austin's actions were driven by delusions. He had believed he was under some kind of supernatural influence. He had no recollection of the attack and was unaware of the damage he had caused. The prosecution, however, had a different view.
Well, family spoke very passionately in that courtroom today of many things. They said they still do not buy it, that Austin Haroff was insane despite medical professional expert opinions. They just say the result of that night, that deadly night, was a result of Austin being a drug addict. But a judge made his decision today with support from both the state and defense teams that Austin Haroff did meet that state criteria to be considered insane, so he will be bypassing prison and headed for treatment.
I hate you. I hate you with every part of my being.
You both said your son acted strangely for weeks leading up to the murders, and you even set up an appointment for him to be evaluated. You should have done your job better, quicker. You should not be purchasing him knives.
The state had an evaluation of Austin, and the state's own expert opined that he was insane at the time. So I think it does a disservice to those seeking mental health treatment, for those struggling with these issues. It is real. And it is powerful. The brain is a powerful organ, and that's what this was about.
And of course, we don't know just how much time he might spend in that mental health institution, but we do know that he would never be released or discharged without staff and medical professionals there deeming him to not be a danger to society, to the public. He would also have to go before a judge before any decisions would be made. Reporting live in Martin County, I'm Megan McRoberts, WPTV, News Channel 5.
They painted Austin as someone who had premeditated his actions. They pointed to his behavior before the crime and the gruesome nature of the attack as evidence of malice, not madness. The jury would ultimately be left to decide, was Austin a victim of his mental illness, or was he a cold-blooded killer? The verdict would send shockwaves through the community, and the case would forever be a reminder of the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness. In the wake of the murders, Jupiter was left in shock. The community, so accustomed to tranquility, was now shattered. Neighbors, friends, and family members tried to understand how something so violent and senseless could happen right under their noses. There were endless questions, but no clear answers. How could a young man, once so normal, turn into a killer? How could someone with such a promising future descend into madness? Mental health advocates began to speak out, urging people to be more aware of the signs of mental illness and the importance of seeking help before tragedy strikes. Austin's case was a tragic reminder of how untreated mental disorders could spiral out of control, leading to devastating consequences. For the victims' families, life would never be the same. The Stevens and Miskin families struggled to cope with their unimaginable losses. They would never again see their loved ones, and the haunting images of that night would stay with them forever. The case of Austin Haroff remains a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness, particularly when it intersects with violence. In the months and years following the horrific attack, the community of Jupiter, Florida, would slowly rebuild, but the scars of that fateful night lingered in the hearts of those who lived through it. The Stevens and Miskin families, forever changed by their losses, would never forget the two innocent lives taken so brutally. Austin Haroff's journey through the legal system was long and fraught with complexities. The question of whether he should be held fully accountable for his actions continued to spark intense debate. Was he a victim of his mental illness, or was he simply a young man who lost control? The court's decision to eventually commit him to a mental health facility rather than prison underscored the central theme of this case: the struggle between justice and compassion, between accountability and understanding. For some, the verdict seemed a necessary step in recognizing the depth of Austin's suffering. For others, it felt like a failure to acknowledge the severity of his actions. In the years since the crime, mental health awareness has gained prominence in public discourse, largely as a result of tragedies like this one. The tragic case of Austin Haroff brought attention to the importance of early intervention, proper treatment, and stigmatization of mental illness. It highlighted the need for more resources and understanding for individuals facing severe mental health challenges before they spiral into irreversible harm. But no amount of mental health reform could ever undo the tragedy. The Stevens and Miskin families still mourn their loved ones, and the town of Jupiter, once known for its idyllic beaches and quiet streets, will always remember the unspeakable violence that occurred there. For Austin, his future remains uncertain. He may never fully understand what happened that night, but the lives lost can never be forgotten. In the end, this case serves as a chilling example of the fine line between the fragility of the human mind and the irreversible damage it can cause. It is a stark reminder that sometimes the most innocent among us, those who are loved and cherished, can fall victim to forces beyond their control. The journey of Austin Haroff, the families of John Stevens and Michelle Miskin, and the community of Jupiter, Florida, will forever be intertwined in the tragic story of that fateful night. where innocence collided with madness in the most brutal of ways. If you found this case insightful and thought-provoking, please take a moment to like this video to show your support. Share it with friends and family who might be interested in the complexities of criminal cases like this one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analyses, real-life case breakdowns, and important stories that deserve to be heard. Your support helps us bring more important topics to light. Thank you for watching.
He came here and then we went inside. The guy, I don't know who it is, he was spanking her.
I'll just respond to that by saying we believe that all the persons responsible for what happened here today are known to us and were inside the home. Again, 2 inside the home are dead, and the other 2 persons were present as well.
Imagine a quiet, picturesque town, Virginia, where families settle down in beautiful homes and where the most excitement comes from neighborhood gatherings. But on the morning of February 24th, 2023, that peace was shattered. At 7:47 a.m., a chilling 911 call comes in.
This morning at 7:49 a.m., we received a cell phone 911 call that was an open line hang-up. When we get the cell phone 911 calls, it doesn't give us an exact address.
On the other end, nothing but moaning. No words, no screams, just distorted sounds of agony. Then the line goes dead. 15 minutes later, another call.
At that 802 911 cell phone call, the husband and the au pair communicate with the 911 call taker. The husband tells the 911 call taker that he just shot a man inside of his home.
When police arrive at a luxurious home in an upscale neighborhood, they are met with a blood-soaked crime scene. Inside, 2 bodies lie lifeless.
Officers arrived into the home and they found a horrific scene. What they did is they found Christine Banfield in an upstairs bedroom. She had been stabbed multiple times in the upper body, and Joseph Ryan, who had been shot multiple times in the upper body.
One brutally stabbed, the other executed with precision. The survivors, a husband, a nanny, and a 4-year-old child, all claiming to be victims of a home invasion gone horribly wrong.
I was always trying to call her to see what's going on because it's early in the morning, like, the people was here. And then it was straight to voicemail. I called Brendan, it's her husband, he's up there. I told him, I see a strange car, but I don't know who's that. Can you please come in here, I'm scared.
But as detectives dig deeper, they uncover a twisted web of lies, betrayal, and a deadly game of seduction and murder. What really happened in that house? Who was the intruder, and why did he end up dead? And most importantly, was this truly a random act of violence, or was it a carefully orchestrated plan years in the making? Brace yourself, because this case is about to take you down a dark and unexpected path, where love turns to obsession, trust turns to treachery, and a deadly plot unfolds in the most chilling way imaginable.
Hold the person or persons accountable for this vicious, brutal attack. Just a horrible, horrible incident that's upset, obviously, this entire community.
As police arrived at 13,230 Stablebrook Way, a luxurious home in Herndon, Virginia, they were met with a scene of absolute carnage. The air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and blood, and the moment they stepped inside, they saw what could only be described as a house of horrors.
Hey, Paul, or Jose, you got that with the nice. You got that with the I mean, watch out, Matt.
There's a dog back there.
So somebody's outside.
Someone's outside in the back?
In the back?
There's a dog in the back.
Anyone else outside? Huh? Who else is outside?
Nobody's outside.
Anybody over here?
In my room. In here.
Here, man, stay here. Man.
Hey.
Stay over here.
Who is the shooter?
Who shot who?
Brendan, he's an officer.
I got a blowout kit if you need it.
Bring it up.
In the upstairs bedroom, Christine Banfield, a 37-year-old pediatric ICU nurse, lay dead. Her body was covered in multiple stab wounds, her lifeless form surrounded by a pool of blood. The violence of the attack suggested fury, personal motive, or an intense struggle. Just a few feet away lay another body, Joseph Ryan, a 39-year-old man. He had been shot twice, once in the head and once in the chest, with the second shot proving to be the fatal one. The only survivors inside the home were Brendan Banfield, Christine's husband, and the one who had called 911, Juliana Paris Magalhães, the 21-year-old Brazilian au pair, and the couple's 4-year-old daughter, who remained unharmed but undoubtedly traumatized.
Bring her down here and we can get info directly from her. Hey, help me.
Can you come down with me?
Anybody else blow up? Okay, she's breathing, but she's got a lot of stab wounds. I think Zach just said
We're getting the ambulance here now.
My host kid is downstairs.
Okay.
I'm here.
How old's your host kid?
She's 4.5.
4.5? Where is she?
I need to talk to her. She doesn't know anything. What's
Can we get her and we'll go outside?
Yeah, I'm gonna get her.
She's grabbing their 4-year-old. We're gonna go outside.
Okay, perfect.
She's please.
It's okay. Yeah.
She's just 4.5.
I know this is hard. Let's get her outside, and then I need to get some information from you.
Brendan told officers a shocking story. He claimed that Joseph Ryan had broken into their home, armed with a knife, and attacked Christine. In a desperate attempt to save his wife, Brendan grabbed his gun and fired a shot to Joseph's head, but Joseph was still alive. That's when Juliana, in a panic, retrieved a second firearm and shot him again in the chest, ensuring he wouldn't get back up.
Hey, I'm Officer Bell. Nice to meet you. Do you want to go outside with us?
We need to go outside, okay?
Let's go. If you just want to tell me quickly what happened.
I don't really know what happened. Everything happened too fast. I was going to take her to the zoo this morning.
Can you go with Officer Batani really quick?
Why don't you come with us?
He has some stickers for you.
I was going to see what's going on because it's early in the morning, like, the people was here. And then it was straight to voicemail. I called Brendan, it's her husband, he's up there. I called him, I see a strange car, but I don't know who is that. Can you please come here, I'm scared. I was just following the car. And then he came here and then we went inside. The guy, I don't know who it is, he was spanking her. I was just here.
Were you here when it happened, or did you walk up in there and that's how they were?
Yeah, he went upstairs first, and then I went to see what's going on. I left following in the basement, and then when I went upstairs, Brendan was saying, "Police, drop the knife."
So, Brendan's a police officer.
Yeah, he's an officer.
Is he with Fairfax?
No.
Where is he an officer?
I don't know. I think it's his office in Vienna.
Vienna?
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
1 second.
I'm gonna get.
Okay.
Do you need anything else right now?
Not right now. The guy who shot is they think a Vienna police officer. So we got to think about that. That car, we don't know who. That's the guy who came up here that started the issue. This car is the outside guy, the silver car.
These two.
So this is their car. That is the guy who came here.
Okay.
And then it was because they were yelling at each other. He was saying like, drop the. I'm sorry, my first language is not English.
No, you're doing really well.
He was saying drop the.
The knife or the gun?
The gun. And Brendan said, no, police, don't drop the knife. And he was saying, I'm gonna kill her. And I don't know, he started stabbing her. I think Brendan shot him. And he asked me help to shot him too because...
It's okay. You don't have to get it all out right now.
I never saw her before. Like,
you didn't see the girl before either? No, so the guy and the girl you don't know?
She's my boss.
Okay.
His father is mom. But I never seen it before. Like, it's a lot of blood.
Okay.
At first glance, it seemed like a tragic case of self-defense. A violent intruder had broken in, murdered Christine, and was then shot by the heroic husband and nanny. But as police started piecing the story together, something felt off. Christine's wounds did not match the narrative of a desperate struggle. The stab wounds were deep and deliberate, as if inflicted by someone who wanted her dead. rather than by an intruder panicking during a break-in. Additionally, Joseph Ryan had no known connection to the Banfield family. He had no history of violence, and there were no signs of forced entry. His belongings were neatly placed, as if he had been invited inside rather than breaking in. Even more unsettling was the timeline of the 911 calls. The first at 7:47 a.m. was suddenly cut off, and the second one came 15 minutes later. That was an unusually long time to wait before calling for help. Was that window of time used to stage the crime scene? The most chilling discovery came when detectives searched Joseph Ryan's phone. They found chat messages between Joseph and a woman named Anastasia 9 on a fetish website. The two had been talking for weeks, exchanging messages about meeting up. On the morning of the murders, Joseph had received a message from Anastasia 9 giving him Christine Banfield's home address. But there was a major problem. Christine was not Anastasia 9. The profile using her photo had been created by someone else. This raised terrifying new questions. Had Joseph Ryan really been an intruder, or had he been lured into a deadly trap? Had he unknowingly walked into an execution? The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, and police had a strong suspicion that the true story was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. At first glance, Joseph Ryan seemed like an enigma, a 39-year-old man with no apparent ties to the Banfield family. Yet here he was, dead inside their home. Investigators needed to understand how he fit into the puzzle. Digging into his past, they found no record of violence, no criminal history, nothing that suggested he was the type to break into a house and commit murder. But what they did find was something much stranger. Joseph had been active on FetLife, a social networking site for people with niche sexual interests and fetishes. On the platform, he went by the name Taco Supreme 7000, and he had been messaging a user named Anastasia9 for about a month. Their conversations were intimate, intense, and centered around rough encounters, bondage, and even blood play. It was the kind of messaging that might not seem alarming until investigators made a shocking discovery. Anastasia 9 had sent Joseph the address of the Banfield home the morning of the murders. This led to one chilling realization. Joseph had not broken into the house. He had been invited there. But by whom? The answer to that question would unravel one of the most twisted murder plots police had ever seen. As detectives pieced together the timeline, they uncovered something disturbing. Christine Banfield was not Anastasia 9. Someone else had created that account, stolen her photo, and used it to lure Joseph Ryan to the house that morning. The question was, who was behind the trap? As investigators dug deeper, all signs began pointing to Brendan Banfield and Juliana Paris Magalhães, the family's live-in au pair. What they uncovered next would turn the case upside down. Brendan and Juliana had been having a secret affair, hiding in plain sight for months. Juliana, a 21-year-old Brazilian nanny, had moved in with the Banfields in 2021. On the surface, she was there to care for their young daughter, but behind closed doors, she had also become Brendan's mistress. The two had been engaged in a romantic and physical relationship, completely unbeknownst to Christine. Text messages, receipts from secret getaways, and hidden late-night communications all revealed a deep connection between them. But rather than choosing a divorce, Brendan and Juliana had seemingly decided on a deadly alternative, one that involved murdering Christine and pinning the crime on an innocent man. To execute their plan, they needed a scapegoat, someone they could manipulate into walking into a death trap. That's where FetLife came in. Either Brendan or Juliana created the fake Anastasia 9 profile, using an old photo of Christine to catfish unsuspecting men. Their target became Joseph Ryan, a man who had no idea what he was walking into. For weeks, Anastasia 9 had flirted with Joseph, engaging in conversations about bondage, domination, and even blood play. The messages grew increasingly intense and suggestive, leading up to the moment Anastasia 9 finally invited Joseph over to the Banfield home. He likely believed he was about to meet a woman eager to explore her fantasies. Instead, he was about to be executed for a crime he didn't commit. Brendan's actions that morning only made things more suspicious. Instead of heading to work as scheduled, he parked his car at a nearby McDonald's, waiting. When Juliana called him, claiming a strange man had entered the home, He immediately rushed back. It was as if he had been expecting that call all along. But one of the most damning details? Christine's phone had already been turned off before she was attacked. This wasn't an act of random violence. It was a carefully coordinated murder plot, executed by two people who thought they could get away with it. The problem? They weren't as smart as they thought. The inconsistencies, the fake profile, the 15-minute delay in calling 911, and their suspicious behavior after the crime all pointed to a setup. What they had believed to be a foolproof plan was starting to fall apart, and soon both Brendan and Juliana would pay the price. The deeper detectives dug into the case, the more they realized this wasn't a crime of passion. It was a premeditated execution. The relationship between Brendan Banfield and Juliana Paris Magalhães wasn't just an affair, it was the foundation of a deadly conspiracy. The two lovers wanted to start a new life together, but there was one major obstacle standing in their way: Christine Banfield. For Brendan, divorce wasn't an option. He had built a comfortable life with Christine, a big house, a beautiful daughter, a respected job in the IRS's Criminal Investigations Unit, and splitting from his wife would mean losing a fortune. A divorce would be messy, public, and expensive, potentially damaging his career. If he left Christine, he would have to pay alimony, share custody of their child, and likely face scrutiny from family and friends. That wasn't the future he wanted. Instead, he wanted Christine gone completely, and he wanted someone else to take the fall for it. That's when the murder plot was born. Brendan and Juliana devised a cold and calculated plan, a perfect crime that would erase Christine from their lives while making Brendan look like a hero who had simply defended his family. If everything went according to plan, Brendan would emerge as a widowed father, showered in sympathy, free to move Juliana into his home permanently, and keep full control of his daughter and finances. But to make this work, they needed a scapegoat. They found their perfect pawn in Joseph Ryan, a 39-year-old man with no criminal history who had been lured into their trap through a fake online identity. Either Brendan or Juliana, using the alias Anastasia9, had flirted with Joseph for weeks on FetLife, gaining his trust. They set up a meeting at Christine's house, tricking him into thinking he was coming over for a consensual encounter. Instead, he was about to be framed for murder. The plan was executed with surgical precision. On the morning of February 24th, 2023, Brendan pretended to leave for work, but instead parked at a nearby McDonald's, waiting for Juliana's call. Meanwhile, Joseph arrived at the Banfield home, expecting to meet Anastasia 9. But instead of an intimate encounter, he walked into a nightmare. Christine, completely unaware of what was happening, was ambushed inside her own home. Here's where the horror truly begins. Who actually killed Christine? There are two chilling possibilities. Either Brendan and Juliana murdered Christine themselves, stabbing her to death before Joseph even arrived, or Joseph unknowingly walked in on a crime in progress. In either scenario, Brendan had already decided Joseph needed to die. As soon as Joseph entered the home, Brendan shot him in the head, eliminating him as a witness. But in order to sell the home invasion story, he needed Juliana to be part of it. So he told her to grab the second gun and fire a final shot into Joseph's chest. That final shot was the killing blow. Now they just had to call 911 and put on a convincing performance. Brendan told police he had walked in on Joseph stabbing Christine, and he had no choice but to shoot him to protect his wife. Juliana played the role of the terrified witness, backing up his story. They waited 15 minutes before making the second 911 call, likely rearranging the crime scene, planting evidence, and making sure everything looked exactly how they wanted it before police arrived. To an outsider, it seemed like a tragic but clear-cut case of self-defense. A violent intruder breaks in, kills a woman, and is shot down by her husband in an act of protection. Brendan expected the investigation to be quickly closed, leaving him to grieve publicly while secretly celebrating his freedom with Juliana. But he made one critical mistake. He underestimated how closely detectives would scrutinize every detail. The fake online identity, the missing phone, the lack of forced entry, the unusual 911 timeline, and the suspicious relationship between him and Juliana all began exposing the truth. What Brendan thought was a foolproof crime was slowly unraveling before his eyes. In the weeks after the murder, Brendan and Juliana behaved as if nothing had happened. Juliana moved into Brendan's bedroom almost immediately, and within days they had changed their phones and iCloud accounts, erasing potential evidence. They likely believed they had gotten away with it, but what they didn't realize was that police were already closing in on them. Their web of lies was about to collapse completely, and the two lovers who thought they had committed the perfect murder would soon find themselves facing justice. In the days following the murders, Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhães behaved as if nothing had happened. They had orchestrated a brutal crime, staged a false narrative, and deceived police, or so they thought. Instead of mourning Christine's tragic death, Brendan and Juliana grew even closer. Within a week, Juliana had moved into Brendan's bedroom. They were no longer hiding their relationship, acting like a couple without any fear of suspicion. The sudden shift raised eyebrows. Neighbors and family found it odd that Brendan seemed unshaken by the loss of his wife. Instead of a grieving husband, he appeared to be a man who had just gotten exactly what he wanted. But investigators weren't fooled. They knew something wasn't right. The inconsistencies in Brendan's version of events, the 15-minute delay in calling 911, the fake online profile used to lure Joseph Ryan to the house, and the convenient way Brendan framed him as a violent intruder, all of it pointed to something far more sinister. Despite their confidence in getting away with murder, Brendan and Juliana made a series of crucial mistakes that helped detectives unravel the truth. Shortly after Christine's murder, Brendan and Juliana changed their phones and iCloud accounts. This was a major red flag. What were they trying to hide? Investigators also discovered that, just days after Christine's death, Brendan had taken Juliana to a gun range. Why would a grieving husband be teaching his late wife's nanny how to shoot? Then there was Christine's missing phone. Police suspected that Brendan had turned off Christine's phone before killing her to ensure she couldn't call for help or leave any last messages. Yet when officers searched the house, they couldn't find the device. Even more suspiciously, investigators uncovered emails between Brendan and Juliana, ones that suggested their relationship had been going on long before Christine's death. They traveled together, exchanged romantic messages, and planned a future without Christine. But instead of divorcing her, Brendan chose murder. After months of building their case, authorities finally made their move. On October 25, 2023, police arrested Juliana Perez Magalhães, charging her with the murder of Joseph Ryan. Her arrest sent shockwaves through the community. The once trusted family au pair, who had been seen as an innocent bystander, was now facing a murder charge. But her arrest was only the beginning. The real target was Brendan Banfield. With Juliana in custody, detectives had the perfect opportunity to break her. If they could get her to talk, they could prove Brendan was the true mastermind. And that's exactly what happened. Under pressure, Juliana flipped. Facing the terrifying possibility of spending life in prison,
Juliana Perez Magalhães, and they have charged her with second-degree murder. She is currently being housed at the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center.
She took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Brendan in exchange for a lesser charge. If she fully cooperated with authorities, she could avoid jail time altogether. Nearly a year later, in September 2024, police made their biggest move yet. Brendan Banfield was arrested and charged with the murders of both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. The man who thought he had executed the perfect crime was now in handcuffs, facing 4 counts of aggravated murder. Authorities charged Brendan not only with murdering his wife, but also intentionally luring and executing Joseph Ryan to cover it up. The additional charges reflected how calculated and cold-blooded the crime truly was. Throughout the investigation, Brendan remained silent, refusing to answer questions or confess to any involvement. Every time he was questioned, he pleaded the fifth, hoping to protect himself. But with Juliana's testimony, a mountain of digital evidence, and motive as clear as day, prosecutors were confident they had enough to put Brendan away for life. One of the most shocking revelations came just before Brendan's arrest. Prosecutors discovered that he had been secretly helping Juliana obtain a new passport. Juliana was planning to flee the country, likely back to Brazil, to avoid prosecution altogether. Brendan was caught driving her to the consulate, which only reinforced how guilty they both were. The plan failed, and authorities acted quickly to ensure neither of them escaped justice. By October 2024, Juliana had fully cooperated with authorities and pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the death of Joseph Ryan. In exchange for her testimony, her charges were downgraded, and if she continues to comply, she will likely serve little to no jail time. Brendan, on the other hand, is facing a long and grueling legal battle. With Juliana's damning testimony against him, the fake online identity, the forensic evidence, and his suspicious behavior after the murder, his fate is all but sealed. As of now, Brendan remains in custody, awaiting trial. If convicted, he faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. What started as a twisted plan to get rid of his wife and frame another man has now ended with his own downfall. He had hoped to start a new life with his young lover, but instead he has lost everything. The very person he committed the crime with, Juliana, is now the key witness against him. Brendan may have believed he could outsmart everyone, but in the end, the truth always finds its way out. It was a story of obsession, manipulation, and betrayal. What started as a forbidden romance between a married man and his young nanny spiraled into a horrifying scheme to commit the perfect murder. But Brendan and Juliana weren't as clever as they thought. The fake online identity, the fabricated home invasion, and the botched execution of their plan led to their downfall. Now Christine is dead, Joseph Ryan is dead, and their 4-year-old daughter is left without both parents. Brendan, the man who tried to orchestrate the ultimate deception, is now facing a lifetime behind bars. Meanwhile, Juliana, once his lover and accomplice, may walk free, her only punishment being the knowledge that she helped destroy multiple lives. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones capable of the worst betrayals. In the end, the au pair murders serve as a chilling testament to how love, greed, and deception can spiral into unthinkable violence. What began as a secret affair turned into a calculated, cold-blooded murder plot, orchestrated by a man who saw his wife as an obstacle and an innocent stranger as a pawn. Brendan Banfield believed he could eliminate his wife, frame another man, and start a new life with his young lover. But in his arrogance, he overlooked the loose threads that would ultimately unravel his scheme. Joseph Ryan, lured into a trap, lost his life without ever knowing the truth. Christine Banfield was brutally murdered in her own home, betrayed by the man she trusted most. And at the heart of it all, a 4-year-old girl was left to grow up without either of her parents, a victim of the monstrous selfishness that tore her family apart. No matter how carefully plotted, murder leaves behind a trail of lies, grief, and irreversible damage. A lesson Brendan and Juliana learned far too late. If you found this story shocking, tragic, or just plain unbelievable, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime cases that remind us just how dark human nature can be. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.
Get out of the car! Get out of the car right now! Let me see your hands! Walk to me! Where is he? Where is he? Walk back to me! Walk back to me now! I got the female coming back to me right now. There's probably one outstanding in the car. Come back to me. Let me see your hands. Come back. Where is he?
He went that way.
What is he? Is he in the car?
No, he went that way.
Come here. Get down. Get down. Let me check you.
Okay.
Get in the car.
Okay. Oh, God, help me.
Get in the car. Get in the car. Let me see. I need to check you. I need to check you for weapons.
Okay.
Where's he at? Who is it?
His name is Mark. He's my boyfriend.
Does he have any weapons?
Yes, he does.
What does he have?
He has a gun.
Where is he at?
He
ran?
Yes, he did.
The sun rose over the vast New Mexico desert, casting long shadows over the quiet highways outside Santa Fe. It was a seemingly normal morning until the silence was shattered by the blaring of sirens and the roar of engines. A white Chevy Malibu was speeding recklessly down the interstate, pursued by multiple police cruisers. Officers, desperate to stop the vehicle, were unaware that within minutes, 2 lives would be lost, another permanently changed, and an entire town left in shock. The driver, a woman in distress, was allegedly being held hostage by a dangerous man. She had begged a witness to call 911, claiming her kidnapper was armed and threatening to kill her.
Lady out in my parking lot here at the Vizcaya Apartments, she asked me to call the police. Somebody's in her car, won't get out. She says he has a knife held on her. She's now leaving. She's in a white Malibu.
Police responded immediately, believing they were in a race against time to save her life. But what followed was something far more sinister than anyone could have expected. As the chase escalated into chaos, a fatal collision left a veteran police officer and a retired firefighter dead on impact. The wreckage stretched across the highway, the result of one of the most reckless pursuits in Santa Fe's history. Yet when the dust settled, something wasn't right. The story the woman told about her violent abduction, the armed man, the threats on her life began to fall apart.
Male and a female crashed into the fence, car was smoking, and they took off. I got behind her, I didn't see no one else in the vehicle at all.
The supposed kidnapper she accused didn't even know who she was. Police, initially determined to track down a dangerous fugitive, instead found themselves questioning if the real criminal had been in their custody the whole time. This is the true story of deception, destruction, and a desperate escape gone terribly wrong.
Police spotted the car minutes later. The suspect led police on a chase down I-25 going the wrong way. That chase led to a deadly crash involving at least 4 cars. A Santa Fe police officer died in the crash, along with the driver who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
A case that began with a rescue mission, but ended with a web of lies unraveled. And at the center of it all?
He was armed with a knife and was taking a vehicle occupied by a woman. We're still working on his involvement and the totality of the investigation. We do plan to release his information once we get everything locked down and his identity.
A woman who had played the victim before, but this time, the consequences were deadly. Janine Yaro was no stranger to law enforcement. Her criminal record stretched back to 2005 when she was first arrested for shoplifting. What began as small-scale thefts soon escalated into a pattern of more serious offenses, each one revealing a reckless disregard for the law. Over the years, her rap sheet grew to include auto theft, resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, and handling stolen property. Despite multiple encounters with the justice system, Janine managed to evade long-term consequences, often receiving probation, reduced sentences, or having cases dismissed due to lack of witnesses. By 2013, Janine had shifted from petty crimes to high-risk offenses. She was arrested for stealing vehicles, a crime that carried harsher penalties than shoplifting. In 2014, she was caught breaking into cars but avoided serious punishment when the case was dismissed. The pattern repeated itself multiple times. She would commit a crime, get caught, tell an elaborate story, and somehow avoid major jail time. Law enforcement officials saw her as a career criminal, someone who had learned how to manipulate the system to her advantage. But what made Janine Yaro especially dangerous wasn't just her willingness to steal and run from the police, it was her habit of lying to cover up her crimes. In 2 separate incidents in 2021, she had fled from law enforcement in stolen vehicles, crashed, and then claimed she had been kidnapped. She told police on both occasions that she had been forced to drive against her will, hoping to shift the blame onto a non-existent assailant. Investigators later discovered that her so-called kidnapper didn't exist, and the crimes had been entirely her doing. Her repeated ability to escape punishment only seemed to embolden her. She had no fear of consequences, believing that she could talk her way out of anything. In her mind, the more dramatic the lie, the more believable it would be. But in March of 2022, her biggest lie yet would result in a devastating tragedy, one that no fabricated story could ever erase. On the morning of the chase, Janine Yaro was seen in a Santa Fe apartment complex where a resident, Richard Muser, witnessed her pleading for help. She told him that a man, her boyfriend, Mark Lopez, was holding her hostage in a white Chevy Malibu. According to Yaro, Lopez was armed with a knife and a gun, threatening to kill her. Muser, alarmed by the scene, immediately called 911.
Lady out in my parking lot here at the Vizcaya Apartments, She asked me to call the police. Somebody's in her car, won't get out. She says he has a knife held on her. She's now leaving. She's in a white Malibu.
Within minutes, Officer Romo located the white Malibu, but when he tried to stop it, the driver refused to comply. Instead of pulling over, the car sped off, leading officers on a dangerous high-speed pursuit through Santa Fe. The situation escalated dramatically when the Malibu crossed into oncoming traffic on Interstate 25, endangering dozens of lives. Vehicles swerved, trying to avoid a collision, but Officer Robert Duran and retired firefighter Frank Lovato were not so lucky. At nearly 90 miles per hour, Duran's police cruiser collided head-on with Lovato's truck, killing both men instantly.
We believe Jaramillo led officers on a chase, driving the suspect car and causing the fatal crash that killed Officer Duran and Mr. Lovato.
The impact was so severe that Duran's vehicle was nearly disintegrated.
On I-25, coming from El Dorado, there was a head-on. There's 4 cars involved. Well, I know they're dead.
As chaos unfolded, Officer Montano crashed into another civilian car, permanently injuring a woman named Alexis Jenkins.
Are you okay? I mean, I know you were involved in the crash, but is there any sort of like entrapment or anything like that?
Yeah, 286 is entrapped in his vehicle right now.
286 is entrapped?
Yes.
Okay, are you out of your vehicle?
I just got out of my vehicle now.
Meanwhile, the white Malibu continued its escape attempt, colliding with yet another truck before finally coming to a halt. Officers immediately surrounded the wreckage, expecting to find an armed and dangerous fugitive inside. But instead, a terrified woman emerged, screaming for help. Janine Yaro collapsed into the arms of police officers, claiming she had barely survived a kidnapping attempt.
Get out of the car right now! Let me see your hands! Walk to me! Where is he? Where is he? Walk back to me! Walk back to me now!
I got the female coming back to me right now. There's probably one outstanding in the car.
Come back to me. Let me see your hands. Come back. Where is he?
He went that way.
What is he? Is he in the car?
No, he went that way.
Come here. Get down. Get down. Let me check you. Get in the car.
Okay. Oh, God.
Get in the car. Get in the car. Let me see. I need to check you. I need to check you for weapons.
Okay.
Where's he at? Who is it?
His name is Mark. He's my boyfriend.
Does he have any weapons?
Yes, he does.
What does he have?
He has a gun.
Where is he at?
He
ran?
Yes, he did.
Okay, stand by. So I have the victim right now in the back of my car. She's saying it's her boyfriend, unknown on the name yet. He's got 1080 with a gun, went into these bushes right here.
Okay, let's get some clarification on exactly where we're at, and we need to establish a perimeter on that, please.
Okay, what is his name?
His name is Mark.
Mark what?
Lopez.
Where, he ran off or what?
Yes, he did.
Are you sure he's not in the vehicle?
I'm sure, sir.
You're positive?
I'm positive, sir. He hit me, and he ran.
Okay. We need to clear this vehicle as well. I don't know if there's anybody else in here.
He was gonna burn me.
Did he stab you at all? Did he hurt you at all?
I don't know.
Okay, what kind of gun does he have?
He had a knife to me, too.
He has a gun or no?
A gun and a knife.
Okay. What's his last name?
Lopez.
Lopez? What's his date of birth?
I'm not too sure because I haven't been going out with him very long.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. He went this way or what?
I don't know, sir.
Somebody trying to
He hit me.
Okay, any units that are coming up, what I want you guys to do is start diverting I-25 down, I-25 northbound traffic off of the highway.
When did he get out of the car? Were you driving?
No.
I know it's take a breath. We're trying to help you get information.
I was not driving. He got out.
He was driving?
He was gonna kill me and light me on fire. There's gas in the car.
Mark Lopez?
Yes. Tell him be careful. There's gas in there.
Okay, so the victim is saying that the suspect is a Mark Lopez, no date of birth. Apparently there's gas and fire in the car. I didn't see anybody exit besides her, so he may still be in the vehicle. Okay, stay in the car, okay? Keep your head down. He has a gun.
She insisted that her boyfriend, Mark Lopez, had escaped into the desert and was armed and dangerous. Officers launched an immediate manhunt, believing they were searching for a violent criminal who had just caused the deaths of 2 men. But as police began checking records, something wasn't right. When they searched for Mark Lopez, they discovered that he had been at work all day, with multiple alibis and surveillance footage proving his whereabouts. Even more baffling, Lopez had never met Janine Yaro in his life.
I feel very violated, and my character, my job finding, just everybody in my professional, my friends, this is very, very embarrassing.
The woman they had rushed to save was suddenly becoming the prime suspect. Further investigation revealed no evidence of gasoline on Yaro or inside the Malibu, contradicting her claim that her captor had tried to set her on fire.
He woke me up in this so terrible, terrible, terrible way, pouring some gas on me. I smelled it, and then I felt the cold. When my clothes and everything, he told me he was gonna burn me.
Okay.
He said he was gonna set me on fire and I was gonna die. But he was gonna kill me.
The knife and gun she said he had were never found.
I seen him, he had the knife in his hand and everything, but it was closed. But I seen it.
So when you say closed, was it a folding knife? Yeah? And the blade was closed.
Yeah.
But he was still holding it against your neck and your chest.
Yeah, and he was telling me that I'm not gonna leave and he was gonna kill me.
And then came the most damning evidence. Witnesses who saw the Malibu at the beginning of the chase confirmed that Janine Yaro herself had been the driver the entire time. It was becoming painfully clear that there had never been a kidnapping. Janine Yaro had simply stolen a car, fled police, and fabricated a lie to avoid getting caught. But this time, her deception had cost lives. As the investigation unfolded, the evidence against Janine Yaro became undeniable. Every aspect of her story began to fall apart under scrutiny. The so-called kidnapper, Mark Lopez, was proven to be entirely uninvolved, with a solid alibi backed by security footage, phone records, and multiple witnesses. There was no physical evidence to support her claim that she had been doused in gasoline, nor was there any sign of the weapons she insisted her abductor had used to threaten her.
Okay, so what happened?
Okay, my boyfriend kept me here.
Where's here?
Grant. Grant. And for 2 days, he didn't let me go. I don't know what the hell. He didn't give me no water. He didn't give me nothing. That's why when I came to this man's house here, I asked him for a water. I was so I'm so dehydrated, sir. He just kidnapped me and didn't let me do anything.
192-108, we're gonna need you to come move.
And I was trying to get away from him. I saw this house, so I came here. And he ran the other way.
Ran what other way?
The car, let me see. He ran to the left-hand side. He ran to the left. And I went up.
So he ran to the left, you went up? Okay. What's he wearing?
He's wearing a red shirt also, with black jeans. They're they hang off, where they show their...
Where it shows his ass?
Yeah.
What color's his skin?
Dark brown.
He's dark? Like him dark?
Lighter.
Lighter than him? Okay. Where was he sitting in the car?
He was down on the ground more.
On the ground? What seat?
Kind of down on the middle part, he was on the passenger side.
He was on the passenger side down? What all's in that car?
I was trying to stop, sir. I was trying to stop.
What all's in that car?
I have my guitar in there.
Uh-huh.
We were going just to visit a friend of his, he said. We never got to a friend's house.
So how could he be holding a knife to her neck, keeping you from stopping if he's down on the floorboard of the vehicle?
He had the knife in his hands, sir, but they didn't.
But how is he holding it to your neck?
And then he got up and then he put it to my neck and he told me to.
Where at on your neck?
Over here. He told me that he was gonna kill me if I tried to stop again because I was trying to stop, sir. I was trying to stop and then he punched me right here and he was choking me. He was choking me. Most of the time he was choking me. It hurts me. I can't even...
He was choking you? While you were driving from us?
No. He was punching my stomach. He punched me a lot of times in my stomach and he told me not to stop because I was pushing the brake. I was trying to stop.
The final and most damning piece of evidence came from eyewitness accounts and police reports that confirmed what detectives had already begun to suspect. Janine Yaro had been the driver of the white Chevy Malibu all along. With her web of lies collapsing, authorities had no choice but to place Janine Yaro under arrest. She was charged with vehicular homicide for the deaths of Officer Robert Duran and retired firefighter Frank Lovato, as well as reckless driving, causing serious injury for the crash that left Alexis Jenkins permanently disabled. Additionally, she faced charges of auto theft, as the Chevy Malibu had been reported stolen, and false reporting, as her entire story about being kidnapped was fabricated from the start. Even as she was taken into custody, Janine refused to admit the truth. She continued to insist that she had been a victim, repeating her story with unwavering conviction, despite the overwhelming proof that she had orchestrated the entire event. Detectives confronted her with the evidence, yet she remained defiant, attempting to twist the narrative to her advantage. However, this time, her usual strategy of deception would not work. Unlike in her past run-ins with the law, there was no technicality to save her, no missing witness to make the case disappear, and no sympathy left to exploit. This time, Janine Yaro's lies had gone too far, resulting in real deaths, real suffering, and irreversible destruction. The justice system was no longer willing to grant her the second chances she had so often manipulated. She was officially booked into jail, awaiting trial for the most serious crimes of her life. Janine Yaro's trial became one of the most closely watched cases in Santa Fe's history, not just because of the tragic loss of life, but because of the shocking nature of her deception.
And after you've been found out, what do you say?
I'm not a murderer. I am not.
I'm
not a murderer.
Stop talking.
You have taken the life of two outstanding members of our community, a police officer and a retired emergency responder. And you did so in the most egregious, deplorable way. Their families, friends, and fellow officers' lives have been changed forever.
What had initially been believed to be a desperate escape from a violent kidnapper had instead been an elaborate and reckless lie, one that resulted in two innocent people losing their lives and a third suffering permanent injuries. Prosecutors were determined to ensure that this time, Yaro would face the full weight of justice. As the trial began, the courtroom was filled with emotion. On one side sat the families of Officer Robert Duran and retired firefighter Frank Lovato, still grieving the senseless loss of their loved ones. On the other side sat Janine Yaro, the woman responsible for their deaths, still refusing to take accountability. The prosecution wasted no time painting a clear picture of what had happened. This was not an unfortunate accident, nor was Yaro a helpless victim. Instead, she was a career criminal who had spent years manipulating the system, and this time, her recklessness had claimed lives. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Surveillance footage and witness testimonies confirmed that Janine was the driver of the white Chevy Malibu. Phone records and work logs proved that Mark Lopez, the man she had blamed, wasn't even near the scene. The crash reconstruction experts detailed the severity of the high-speed impact, explaining how Yaro's reckless driving led directly to the deaths of Officer Duran and Frank Lovato. Medical professionals testified about the severe and life-altering injuries suffered by Alexis Jenkins, emphasizing how Yaro's decisions had destroyed multiple lives in mere moments. Despite the mountain of irrefutable evidence, Yaro pleaded not guilty and stuck to her fabricated story, claiming that she had been a victim of kidnapping and had no control over what had happened. But her cold and emotionless demeanor in court only made things worse for her. Prosecutors highlighted her lack of remorse, pointing out that she had never expressed sympathy for the lives lost and had only tried to save herself. The defense attempted to argue that Yaro had suffered trauma and may have been mentally unstable, but the prosecution countered with her long history of criminal activity, particularly her previous fake kidnapping claims. The jury, hearing about her repeated lies to avoid punishment, saw through her act. It took them only a few hours of deliberation to reach a unanimous guilty verdict on all charges.
With respect to count 1, first-degree murder, Frank Lovato, I'm sentencing you to life imprisonment. With respect to count 2, first-degree murder, Robert Duran, I'm sentencing you to life imprisonment.
When the verdict was read aloud, the families of the victims broke down in tears, finally receiving the justice they had been waiting for. The judge, in his sentencing remarks, did not hold back. He called Janine Yaro's actions selfish, manipulative, and completely devoid of regard for human life. He condemned her history of deception and made it clear that she would never again have the opportunity to harm another innocent person. Janine Yaro was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the first time in her long history of avoiding consequences, there was no escape, no loophole, and no more lies to tell. The courtroom, though still filled with grief, finally saw justice served for the lives that had been taken. Janine Yaro had spent nearly 2 decades manipulating the system, escaping serious consequences through a web of deception and fabricated victimhood. But in the end, her own lies had sealed her fate. What started as yet another reckless attempt to flee police ended in devastation, death, and a life sentence. Unlike the times before, where technicalities or sympathetic leniency had allowed her to walk free, this time there were real lives lost, real families shattered, and undeniable proof of her guilt.
I'm sorry. To the family, with all my heart. If I could take back that day, I would. I made bad choices. I was on drugs and I was drinking, but I also have my family that I'm hurting. Putting me away many years is not going to bring them back. God knows. I deserve a second chance, Your Honor, please. For my family and myself, I would never do that. I would never cause harm. I'm sorry.
The justice system had finally caught up with her, and there would be no more second chances. For the families of Officer Robert Duran and retired firefighter Frank Lovato, the trial had brought some closure, but the pain of losing their loved ones would never fully heal. Duran, a dedicated police officer, had given his life in the line of duty, trying to stop what he believed was a kidnapping in progress. Lovato, a firefighter who had spent his career saving lives, was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The tragedy of their deaths was amplified by the fact that it never needed to happen in the first place. If not for Janine Yaro's selfishness and recklessness, both men would still be alive today.
My brother died trying to save her life. Her sorry but not sorry letter, it was also very hurtful and upsetting to hear the details of her accounts when my brother gave the ultimate sacrifice. 2 beautiful lives were lost, 2 families that will never be the same.
Alexis Jenkins, the civilian who had been severely injured in the pursuit, would never fully recover. The crash had left her with permanent injuries, altering the course of her life forever. She had been a bystander, an innocent driver on the highway, completely unaware that she was about to become collateral damage in one woman's desperate attempt to escape accountability. No matter what sentence Janine Yaro received, it could never undo the irreversible damage she had caused. This case serves as a chilling reminder of how a single lie can spiral out of control, leading to unimaginable consequences. Janine Yaro thought she could lie her way out of trouble like she had so many times before. But this time, the cost was far too great. The legal system had given her chance after chance. But instead of learning from her past mistakes, she pushed her luck until it ran out. Now she will spend the rest of her life behind bars with no possibility of parole, left to sit alone with the weight of the destruction she caused. The days of manipulating the truth, evading justice, and creating false narratives are over. In the end, the one thing she could never escape was the truth itself, and the truth had finally caught up with her.
Well, it's about 2 weeks before the end. This is going to be my last video, probably before.
In the quiet town of North Bend, Washington, the Keller family lived what seemed to be an ordinary life. Lynette Keller, a loving wife and mother, spent her days crafting and sharing her passions on YouTube.
I know my husband spoils me. He hates seeing me in pain, so tonight he came home and he gave me another $20 because he knows I'm going to the doctor's tomorrow and he wants me to stop at Michael's and get some more stuff.
Their daughter, Kayleen, was just beginning her journey into adulthood.
So how do you feel, Kayleen?
No more high school, yay!
Feel different? No?
And then there was Peter Keller, the husband, the father, the provider.
At this point, I don't know what's going to happen. I may get caught right away. Basically, if I get caught, I'm just going to shoot myself.
To everyone who knew him, he was a quiet, reserved man. Perhaps a little distant, but nothing out of the ordinary. But behind the closed doors of their home, something terrifying was unfolding.
So, I mean, I could basically be dead in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I don't know. It's all up to chance at this point. So, I don't think anyone knows where I'm at. But if they put it together, who knows? At this point, I have to take that chance. So, it's just going to be a point of, go as far as I can. I do have my escape, and that's death. And I'm okay with that.
For nearly a decade, Peter Keller had been leading a double life. He wasn't just a man with a survivalist hobby, he was a man with a plan, a dark, twisted plan. Deep in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, hidden among the towering trees, Peter had been building something, a secret underground bunker. He had spent years hauling supplies, digging into the mountainside, preparing for the day he would disappear from society forever. But he wasn't planning on going alone. What happened next would shock even the most hardened detectives. It was a crime so calculated, so cold, that even the investigators who had seen it all were left disturbed.
I'm not doing too good today. Sorry, I'm just in a lot of pain. Today is just a horrible, horrible day.
The truth about Peter Keller would only be revealed after his final, irreversible act. A horrifying decision that left a mother and daughter dead, a home in flames, and a manhunt that would end in one of the most unsettling discoveries the state had ever seen. What could drive a man to destroy everything he had built? What was he truly running from? And what sinister thoughts lurked behind Peter Keller's calm and quiet demeanor? Peter Keller wasn't always a monster. He was once just another man trying to navigate the struggles of life. A high school sweetheart romance led to marriage with Lynette, and together they raised their daughter, Kayleen.
Sorry, my video is probably not good. I have my PJs on, so I'm trying not to go down too far. My name is Lynette, but I like Lynn. And I've been married, in April, I'll be married for 20 years. I have a daughter who's going to be 19 pretty soon. She's in college. But yeah, that's me. I'm just crafting. I don't work. I can't work right now because of the injury. So yeah, I'm just at home. All right, I better go because I'm just rambling. But yeah, I hope you guys are having a great week. Okay, bye.
They lived a modest life in North Bend, Washington, a small town on the outskirts of Seattle, surrounded by lush forests and towering mountains. It was a place of peace, a place where families built their futures. But while Lynette and Kayleen embraced this life, Peter was quietly rejecting it. Peter had an obsession, one that started small, but grew into something uncontrollable.
I'm getting to the point where just trying to live and pay bills and live as a civilian and go to work, that just freaks me out. It's actually more comfortable for me to think about living out here, robbing banks, pharmacies, just taking what I want for as long as I can. At least it'll be exciting. It won't be boring. And I don't have to worry about Lynette or Kayleen. And everything will be taken care of. It'll just be me. So.
He wasn't just interested in survivalism. He was consumed by it. He spent his free time hiking deep into the woods, testing his limits, and preparing for what he believed was an inevitable collapse of society.
Well, before, a while ago, I used to sit here and think, this whole thing is just crazy at times, and then I'd think about it, and it would make sense, and it's like, okay, this is what I gotta do. Just the more I've thought about it, the more I understand it. I don't really feel bad about it. It's just the way it is. Certain things happen and cause this to happen. So, just kind of accepted it and just rolling with it.
Over time, his fascination turned into something more extreme. He didn't just want to survive. He wanted to disappear. He wanted freedom from responsibility, from bills, from the mundane routine of daily life. And more importantly, he wanted that freedom alone.
My husband got me this table, that table over there, and then this big shelf. I just love this stuff. He got me all that furniture, and then he put my shelves up for me. Such a great husband.
Since 2004, Peter had been secretly working on a hidden bunker deep in the Cascade Mountains. He had spent nearly a decade carrying supplies, digging into the earth, fortifying walls, and making sure that when the time came, he could vanish without a trace. But there was one thing standing in his way: his family.
I just feel like I'm getting knocked back financially. My wife is just gonna suck all the money out that I have.
Peter began to see Lynette and Kayleen not as loved ones, but as obstacles. He resented Lynette for not being able to work due to a past injury, believing she was dragging him down financially.
Can you take a picture of me and sell me on eBay?
He saw Kayleen as another tether, another tie to a life he no longer wanted. The bunker was his escape plan, but he couldn't just leave. He had to erase all traces of his past, and so he made a decision. A horrifying, calculated decision. April 22nd, 2012, was an ordinary day in the Keller household, or at least it appeared to be. Lynette Keller spent time working on her crafting projects, even posting what would unknowingly become her final YouTube video.
So I started YouTube a few months ago. I've been, told about it for quite a bit, but I just never looked into it. And so I figured, okay, might as well, because, I'm not really into the Facebook thing anymore. And I don't really like playing the computer games no more. So I wanted to just focus on my crafts and, do stuff. I found the YouTube and I started getting subbies. I was really excited, like when I first got my subby, Michelle.
Kayleen, her 18-year-old daughter, moved through the house with no awareness of the horror that would soon unfold. As the evening set in, the mother and daughter prepared for bed, unaware that Peter Keller had already made up his mind. While they slept peacefully in their rooms, Peter was wide awake. His mind was sharp, his hands steady. He had spent years planning this moment, ensuring that nothing would go wrong. He retrieved his handgun, fitted it with a silencer he had prepared for this exact purpose, and moved toward their bedroom with a chilling purpose. First, he approached his wife. In the dim glow of the hallway, he stood over her, watching as she breathed softly in her sleep. There was no hesitation. He raised the gun and pulled the trigger. A muffled pop, a slight jerk of her body, and it was over.
It's the point in which I killed my wife and my daughter in their sleep. They won't know it. I'm hoping that I can just do it real clean. Nobody wakes up. Got a silencer, and that's my goal. Nobody's going to suffer. Nobody's even going to know about it.
Lynette never knew what happened. She never had a chance to wake up. The bullet had done its job. Peter then turned toward Kayleen's room. His daughter, the child he had raised, lay curled up under her blankets. Just hours earlier, she had likely spoken to him, perhaps even said goodnight. But to Peter, she was nothing more than another obstacle. He stepped forward, lined up the shot, and fired. One precise bullet to the head, and she was gone. The house fell silent once more, save for Peter's controlled breathing. He had done it. He had erased his past. But his work wasn't finished. He needed to make sure that by the time anyone found the bodies, there would be nothing left to investigate. Moving quickly, he retrieved the gasoline cans he had prepared earlier. One by one, he positioned them throughout the house, near the furniture, under the staircase, along the walls. Every drop of gasoline served a purpose, ensuring that the fire would consume everything. He wasn't just destroying evidence. He was wiping out the very existence of the life he was leaving behind. Striking a match, Peter ignited his family home. Flames spread rapidly, licking at the walls, engulfing furniture, reducing memories and possessions to ashes. The fire roared to life, growing more intense with each passing second, illuminating the dark night in a hellish glow. By the time he stepped outside, the inferno was fully underway. Peter didn't look back. He knew that soon, neighbors would see the flames. They would call the fire department. Authorities would arrive, and the house would be gone. But he wouldn't be there to answer their questions. He was already slipping into the dense forest, disappearing into the wilderness, heading toward the secret bunker he had spent years building.
At this point, I don't know what's going to happen. I may get caught right away. Basically, if I get caught, I'm just going to shoot myself. So, I could basically be dead in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I don't know. It's all up to chance at this point. So, I don't think anyone knows where I'm at. But if they put it together, who knows? At this point, I have to take that chance. So, it's just going to be a point of, go as far as I can. I do have my escape, and that's death. And I'm okay with that. So,
by the time emergency responders arrived, the Keller home was beyond saving. The fire raged, swallowing every trace of the life that once thrived within those walls. But as investigators sifted through the wreckage, they uncovered something far worse than they had expected. Evidence of something far more sinister than an accidental fire. When emergency responders arrived at the Keller home, they were met with an inferno. Flames devoured the structure, thick black smoke billowing into the night sky. Firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the blaze, but by the time the fire was extinguished, the house was nothing more than a smoldering ruin. What they assumed was a tragic accident, a fire that had taken the lives of a mother and daughter, soon turned into something far more sinister. As investigators combed through the wreckage, the first sign that something was wrong came from the bodies themselves. Lynette and Kayleen's remains weren't charred beyond recognition, as one would expect in a fatal house fire. Their bodies, though exposed to the flames, told a different story, one that the fire was never meant to hide. A medical examiner soon confirmed the horrifying truth. Neither woman had died from smoke inhalation or burns. Both had been shot in the head. This revelation changed everything. What was initially thought to be an accidental fire was now a double homicide. Investigators quickly shifted their focus. If Lynette and Kayleen had been murdered before the fire started, then someone had deliberately set the blaze to cover their tracks. But who? And where were they now?
This winter has been, just to show just how brutal it was. Well, we had a big ice storm. This is one of the trees that's fallen down over the trail. Kind of another one over there. Just a lot of damage. Branches down everywhere. Makes it a little more difficult to get through, but I don't want to move it. I'd like to keep it as hard to get through here so nobody will come out here. This winter's been pretty brutal. It's been really slowing me down. I was hoping to be done about a month ago, but it's just constantly snowed, and last month has just been really, really wet and rainy, and It's just couldn't do anything for a long time. But I'm hoping now that the weather is going to change. It looks like it's getting better. It's starting to switch over. Can finally get everything up here and finish this off. Finally do what I have to do and get it out of the way. Well, it's about 2 weeks before I finally drop out of society and start this project.
Suspicion immediately fell on the one person missing from the scene, Peter Keller. His absence raised alarms, and when officers attempted to locate him, they discovered his car had been abandoned in downtown North Bend. He was nowhere to be found.
Well, it's about 2 weeks before the end. This is going to be my last video, probably before till after that. That's terrible.
A deeper look into the family's history provided more disturbing clues. When detectives interviewed family members and friends, they uncovered an unsettling portrait of Peter Keller. He was a man obsessed with survivalism, someone who had spent years preparing for a life off the grid. He had amassed an arsenal of weapons, stockpiled supplies, and often spoke about one day disappearing from society entirely. He was known to take long trips into the wilderness, telling his wife and daughter he was hiking, though in reality, he had been working on something far more elaborate. Then came the breakthrough. As investigators continued searching through the remains of the home, they stumbled upon something unexpected: documents, maps, and even video recordings detailing what appeared to be a hidden bunker. It was meticulously planned, built into the remote wilderness, designed as a self-sustaining shelter. From the blueprints and notes left behind, it became clear. Peter Keller had been planning this for years. Detectives pieced together his chilling plan. He had executed his wife and daughter, set fire to their home, and disappeared into the wilderness, retreating to a bunker no one was supposed to find. But thanks to the records he had left behind, authorities now had a lead. Using topographical maps and satellite imagery, search teams began narrowing down potential locations in the Cascade Mountains. The hunt for Peter Keller had begun, and law enforcement knew they were not just tracking a fugitive, they were tracking a man who had spent years preparing for this exact scenario. The question was, would they find him before he disappeared forever? The hunt for Peter Keller was unlike any other manhunt local law enforcement had faced. This wasn't a fugitive on the run. This was a man who had spent nearly a decade preparing to vanish. He had studied the terrain, mapped out escape routes, and built a fortress in the wild. Tracking him down wouldn't be easy, but investigators had an advantage. Keller had unknowingly left behind the key to his own capture. Using the maps and notes found in the remains of the Keller home, authorities zeroed in on a remote area of the Cascade Mountains. With the aid of aerial surveillance and search teams, they combed through the dense, unforgiving terrain. It wasn't long before they spotted something unusual, a faint plume of smoke rising from deep within the forest. This was it. On April 27, 2012, 5 days after the murders, SWAT teams surrounded the heavily camouflaged bunker.
Tonight, we go inside the mountainside bunker of an accused killer. Police say Peter Keller worked on this elaborate hideout for years. They believe he went there to hide after murdering his wife and daughter in their North Bend home. Keller's body was found Saturday inside that bunker.
One investigator called it something out of a survivalist handbook, an underground fortified bunker, totally camouflaged in a heavily wooded area on a mountainside in the middle of nowhere.
You can see the rough-hewn logs, the timbers that were milled here on the site and pulleyed across this ravine that's in the background. It's incredibly well reinforced.
Hidden among trees and brush, the underground structure was nearly impossible to detect with the naked eye. It was reinforced with logs, dug deep into the mountainside, and had multiple escape routes. The amount of effort that had gone into building it was staggering. Authorities knew they were dealing with a heavily armed man who had nothing to lose. They prepared for the worst. Armed officers took their positions, snipers were placed in key vantage points, and a perimeter was established. Then the standoff began. For nearly 22 hours, police attempted to coax Keller out. They used loudspeakers calling his name and urging him to surrender. They fired tear gas into the bunker, hoping to force him out. But there was no response. Only an eerie silence from within. Keller had spent years making sure no one could reach him, and now his paranoia had become his prison.
This is the end of the day. I'm getting wrapped up, getting ready to leave. I don't know if you can see me, but it's kind of one last look at everything.
On April 28th, authorities finally made their move. After ensuring there were no booby traps, SWAT teams carefully breached the bunker's entrance. What they found inside was a chilling sight: rifles, handguns, ammunition, propane tanks, canned food, and survival gear, all neatly organized. Keller had been prepared to live here for months, maybe even years, but he would never get the chance. At the back of the bunker, lying in a pool of blood, was Peter Keller. He had taken his own life with a gunshot to the head. He had planned for every possible scenario, except one where he would have to face the consequences of his crimes. Peter Keller spent years building an escape from society, constructing a hidden fortress where he could live out his survivalist fantasies. But in the end, he lasted only 5 days before his world came crashing down. His life's work, the bunker, the weapons, the stockpiled supplies, had been for nothing. His elaborate plan to disappear had collapsed under the weight of his own paranoia. Despite years of preparation, his greatest mistake was underestimating the ability of investigators to track him down. He had wanted to be untouchable, yet he left behind everything they needed to find him. But more than the failure of his plan, the true tragedy of Peter Keller's story lies in the people he destroyed. Lynette Keller was a devoted wife and mother who had built a life around love and creativity. Kayleen Keller was a bright, promising young woman with her entire future ahead of her. Both were robbed of their lives in an act of cold-blooded selfishness. For what? A bunker? A dream of living alone in the woods? A paranoid escape from a world he simply refused to be part of? In the end, Peter Keller didn't just take the lives of his wife and daughter, he destroyed himself. His story serves as a chilling reminder of how obsession, resentment, and unchecked paranoia can turn a man into a monster.
He's a great guy. He stuck around with me. I'm, some guys are kind of leave when you get that, it's part of your vows. But anyways, I don't want to get on to that.
I know my husband spoils me. He hates seeing me in pain. So tonight he came home and he gave me another $20 because he knows I'm going to the doctor's tomorrow and he wants me to stop at Michael's and get some more stuff.
And in his final moments, locked away in his self-made tomb, Peter Keller learned the cruelest irony of all. He had spent years running from the world, only to die alone, just as he had always feared. The case of Peter Keller leaves us with unsettling questions. How does someone go from being a husband and father to a cold-blooded killer? At what point does survivalism cross the line from preparedness into dangerous paranoia? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if he hadn't been caught so quickly, would he have gone on to kill again? One thing is certain. Peter Keller didn't escape society. He didn't outsmart the system. He didn't start a new life in the wild. Instead, his name will forever be remembered not as a man who survived, but as a man who destroyed. If you found this case as chilling as we did, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think drove Peter Keller to commit such a horrific act? Do you believe he could have been stopped before it was too late? And if you enjoy deep dives into true crime and disturbing real-life stories, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. Nestled in the heart of Indiana, Delphi was the kind of town where life moved at a relaxed pace. Families had lived there for generations, neighbors knew one another by name, and crime, especially violent crime, was almost unheard of. It was a place where people felt safe, where kids could play outside without fear, and where parents never had to worry about letting their children explore the woods or walk to a friend's house alone. But on February 13th, 2017, that sense of security was forever shattered when two young girls,
Central case, two missing juveniles, Liberty Rose Lynn German, last seen at the High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana, at approximately 1300 hours. Second juvenile, Abigail Joyce Williams, subject was last seen wearing a gray zip up sweatshirt and a red shirt with a red shirt under it and jeans.
Abigail Abby Williams, 13, and Liberty Libby German, 14, set out for a hike and never returned.
On the afternoon of February 13th, 2017, Abby and Libby were dropped off at the trails that lead to the Manhunt High Bridge. They were supposed to be picked up by Libby's father at 3 p.m. They never turned up. The search started around 5:30.
The Manhunt High Bridge was an old abandoned railroad bridge that had become a popular local hangout.
And just off the trail, there's an abandoned railroad bridge, the Manhunt High Bridge, 63 feet above Deer Creek.
The Manhunt High Bridge is not that serene. It's this old, rickety bridge, or it was at the time, right? The rail ties are falling apart. It's, you know, you could look down, take a couple steps and look down and see a 100-foot drop below you.
The bridge itself was both beautiful and dangerous, a relic from the past, stretching high over Deer Creek with missing planks and a rickety structure that made crossing it an adventure.
I mean, it was a very high bridge. The name definitely applies. I grew up watching people post on their Snapchat stories, like going to the bridge to like read a book or things like that, and they'd have their feet like swinging over the edge.
That afternoon, the girls were excited to explore the trail, enjoy the crisp February air, and take some photos.
I'll never forget that day, February 13th. It was around 2 p.m. I saw the picture of Abby on the bridge on their Snapchat stories, and I immediately just knew that something was wrong.
Libby's older sister, Kelsey German, was the last known person to see them alive, dropping them off near the trailhead at approximately 1:35 p.m. They were supposed to meet their ride home at 3:15 p.m. By all accounts, it was a normal, happy day until something sinister interrupted it.
Whole upset, confused, obviously very distraught. Just worried. All I want to do is have the girls get home safe. Missing, abducted, we don't know for sure. There's a cell phone tower, but the ping was last noted about 5 or 6 hours ago. They say the phone's now dead.
Sometime between 2:07 p.m. and 3 p.m., something went terribly wrong.
All options are on the table. Did they run away? Did they go to a party? Did they fall off the bridge? Did they get injured? No one had any idea what had happened to them, but the official search was halted that night and picked up the next morning.
The carefree hike turned into a nightmare, and the small town of Delphi would never be the same again. One of the most haunting aspects of this case is that Libby German had the foresight to record a crucial piece of evidence before she and Abby were attacked. At 2:07 p.m., she posted a Snapchat image of Abby walking along the bridge. This would become the last known photograph of either girl alive. But it was what she did next that turned this case into one of the most chilling murder mysteries in modern history. At 2:13 p.m., Libby took out her phone and recorded a short, grainy video of a man walking toward them on the bridge. He was dressed in a navy blue jacket, blue jeans, and a cap. His hands were tucked into his pockets, and though his pace was unhurried, there was something unsettling about his posture. Then came the audio recording. Just a few words, but enough to send shivers down the spines of investigators and the public alike. "Guys, down the hill!" The tone was firm, commanding. There was no question that this was an order. What happened after those words were spoken remains unknown, but law enforcement later confirmed that the man in the video was their prime suspect. Despite having his image and voice, his identity remained a mystery for years, as if he had vanished into thin air after committing the crime. Why did Libby start recording? Did she recognize the man? Did she sense danger before he even spoke? Or had he approached them in a way that immediately set off alarm bells? These questions have never been fully answered. But her quick thinking meant that even in her final moments, she left behind a critical clue. When Abby and Libby failed to show up at their designated pickup location at 3:15 p.m., concern quickly turned into fear. The families initially assumed the girls had lost track of time or were having too much fun to notice the hour. But as the minutes turned into hours and phone calls to them went straight to voicemail, the worry escalated.
Well, upset, confused, obviously very distraught. Just worried. All I want to do is have the girls get home safe. Missing, abducted, we don't know for sure. There's a cell phone tower, but the ping was last noted about 5 or 6 hours ago. They say the phone's now dead.
By early evening, family members, friends, and local volunteers began searching the trail and surrounding woods. Flashlights cut through the growing darkness as people called out the girls' names, hoping to hear a response.
Word spread quickly that help was needed, that these girls needed to be found. Hundreds of people turned out and searched through the night. Becky Patty, Libby's grandmother, would say that you could see flashlights everywhere like stars in the sky, like fireflies. It was a full town effort.
Police were alerted and an official search was launched. The entire town mobilized, with hundreds of people scouring the trails, creek beds, and remote areas near the bridge. But the searchers' worst fears were confirmed the next day. On February 14th, 2017, at approximately 12:15 p.m., 2 bodies were discovered in a wooded area about half a mile from the Manhunt High Bridge.
Basically, we have identified the bodies of the 2 females that were found out yesterday. Abigail J. Williams, 13, of the Delphi area, and Liberty Rose Lynn German, 14, of the Delphi area. Family has been notified. This is considered a double homicide investigation.
Though law enforcement did not immediately confirm the identities, the families were soon given the devastating news. The bodies belonged to Abby and Libby. Authorities quickly ruled the deaths as homicides, but beyond that, they remained tight-lipped. No official cause of death was released, and few details about the crime scene were made public. This secrecy only fueled speculation. Were the girls restrained? Did they suffer before they died? Some reports suggested that the bodies had been staged in a deliberate manner, possibly as part of a ritual or a message from the killer. Others claimed that eerie symbols had been found near the scene, carved into trees or left behind as a cryptic calling card. Adding to the chilling nature of the crime was the discovery of an unspent .40 caliber bullet casing near the girls' bodies, an odd and seemingly small detail that would later become a vital piece of evidence. Despite having video and audio evidence, law enforcement struggled to identify the man on the bridge. In the days following the murders, police released a composite sketch based on eyewitness accounts. The first sketch depicted an older man with a thick beard, wearing a cap and jacket. But 2 years later, in 2019, authorities released a second sketch. A much younger man with wavy hair and striking features. The contrast between the 2 sketches led to mass confusion. Had law enforcement changed their theory, or had they received new information that pointed them in an entirely different direction? Over the years, several potential suspects were investigated. Among them was Daniel Nations, a registered sex offender who had been arrested in Colorado for threatening hikers with a hatchet. His resemblance to the older suspect sketch made him an initial person of interest, but he was eventually ruled out. Another suspect, Charles Eldridge, was arrested for child exploitation, and his mugshot bore an eerie resemblance to the second sketch. Yet again, no solid evidence linked him to Delphi. Investigators explored numerous theories. Was this the work of an online predator, a serial killer, a local man who knew the area well? Despite thousands of tips pouring in, the case remained frustratingly cold for more than 5 years. For more than 5 years, the Delphi murders had baffled investigators. With thousands of tips pouring in, multiple suspects considered, and countless theories emerging, yet no arrests were made. The community feared the killer could still be among them.
Who may be in this room? We believe you are hiding in plain sight, and you want to know what we know. And one day, you will. A question to you. What will those closest to you think of when they find out that you brutally murdered 2 little girls? 2 children Only a coward would do such a thing.
Blending in as an ordinary citizen, watching as the investigation continued to swirl around him. Then on October 28, 2022, in a stunning development, Indiana State Police announced the arrest of 50-year-old Richard Allen.
Today is not a day to celebrate, but the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and complex investigation.
A local resident who had been living in Delphi the entire time, hiding in plain sight. The revelation was as shocking as it was disturbing.
We expected to be excited and happy and overjoyed that he's arrested, but now we're dealing with understanding that there's a lot of reopening wounds that's coming with that.
Unlike many of the suspects considered over the years, men with criminal histories, connections to violent crimes, or disturbing behavioral patterns, Richard Allen was an unassuming, well-liked member of the community.
I was surprised because he seemed like a real nice guy and everything, waiting on us in the drive-thru and everything.
He worked at the local CVS pharmacy, where he often interacted with customers.
Richard Matthew Allen was 50 years old, had no criminal history, and worked as a farm tech over at the local CVS in Delphi.
Including the very families who had been mourning the loss of Abby and Libby.
I had not interacted with him, but everyone knew who he was. I mean, he worked there for so long. And when I found out who it was, I never in a million years thought that it would have been him. Not someone so integral to the community and to the Delphi experience.
He even developed photos for the German and Williams families after the murders, a detail that would later send chills through those who realized just how close they had been to the man allegedly responsible. For years, he had never been on law enforcement's radar in any significant way, despite the fact that he lived just a few miles from the crime scene and had even spoken to investigators early in the case. According to police records, Allen voluntarily told authorities back in 2017 that he had been on the Monon High Bridge Trail on the day of the murders. At the time, however, this admission didn't seem suspicious. He was just another local who had been near the area. It wasn't until years later that investigators took a second look at his statement and matched it with new forensic evidence. The key breakthrough in identifying Allen came from forensic analysis of a .40 caliber unspent bullet casing found at the crime scene, near the bodies of Abby and Libby. While this casing had been known to investigators for years, advancements in forensic ballistics allowed them to link it directly to a gun owned by Richard Allen. When investigators conducted a search of Allen's home in October 2022, they recovered a Sig Sauer Model P2 26.40 caliber handgun, which was later confirmed through forensic testing to have ejected the casing found at the crime scene. Ballistics experts explained that even though the bullet itself hadn't been fired, when a round is chambered and then removed from a gun, unique markings are left on the casing. When Allen's gun was tested, the markings on the bullet casing left at the crime scene were an exact match, a damning piece of evidence that placed him directly at the scene of the crime. Adding to the evidence against him was the fact that Allen had no reasonable explanation for how a bullet from his gun ended up near the victims. In police interviews, he admitted that the gun was his and that he had owned it since 2001, long before the murders.
Of your house, we find a gun, your gun. Have you owned that gun, right?
I do.
When did you buy it?
Oh my gosh. I don't even remember.
2001. I'll check for you. I know a lot of the answers to the questions I'm going to ask you, but I'm just trying to give you the opportunity to be honest. That's why I asked the question. So you bought it in 2001 in Peru.
Okay.
But when pressed, he denied any involvement in the crime and could not explain why an unspent casing from his firearm was present at the location where Abby and Libby were killed.
And I asked you, have you ever loaned anything out? I gave you scenarios. No. So that's your gun. Either you had that gun or somebody had that gun. Because there's no way that round gets on that property where these two girls were killed without that gun being there. And you're there, your car's there, witnesses say
there is no way a round from my gun was anywhere near the girls, the bridge. It just didn't happen.
Beyond the ballistics evidence, investigators began to take a closer look at Allen's 2017 police interview, where he had originally stated that he had been at the trail on the day of the murders, but had not seen the girls.
It could have been a little before noon or a little after noon. Walked down, back an hour, so probably 1:30, 1:45, depending on exactly what time it was that I got there that day. I just remember walking down the trail, and I had told him that when I was approaching the trailhead, I guess is what I call it, there was 3 girls walking off the trail, and I just remember it looking like one of them was probably watching, not babysitting, but watching the other 2 because they looked a little younger, and they looked very similar. I don't know if they were sisters or whatever, but the other one didn't necessarily. But I remember seeing them walking off the trailhead, and I didn't really see anybody.
At the time, there was nothing inherently suspicious about this. Many people had been in the area that day, and Alan had voluntarily come forward to share his whereabouts. But after the bullet casing match, his own statement placed him at the scene of the crime, reinforcing the belief that he had been lying about his level of involvement.
Well, this doesn't just go away.
I know.
Exactly.
The only person I think can explain all this is you, and you're not explaining it to me.
I don't know what it is you want me to explain.
What were you doing on the bridge? How did your round get there? And why did you kill these 2 girls? And why were you involved in this? What was your involvement?
I had no involvement.
I don't think, listen, Rick, I don't think you're the one that killed them. I don't think you're the one that stuck the knife in them. Are you?
Are you
that guy?
Really?
Are you? I'm asking you.
Anybody that knows me knows I could never, even if I wanted to, do something like that. That's not who I am.
Then what happened?
I can't tell you. How do you expect me to tell you? You want me to make up a story and...
No, the truth. The truth is simple. You don't have to make that up. You just go back and tell me the truth. You can't tell me that this event has not been weighing on you for years and years and years. You're out there.
I've told you that. I don't know what you want me to do at this point.
Following his arrest, disturbing details about Richard Allen began to emerge. Though he had lived a seemingly normal life with a wife and a steady job, investigators began uncovering indications that he may have been leading a double life. Neighbors and acquaintances recalled that his behavior had changed after the murders. Some described him as becoming more withdrawn, while others noted that he had continued going about his daily life as though nothing had happened. An eerie thought, given that he had likely been watching news reports and seeing the sketches of a suspect that looked very much like him. Even more disturbing was the revelation that Allen had allegedly posed as a law enforcement officer at one point, and some witnesses claimed he had exhibited controlling or intimidating behavior. While these allegations are still being investigated, they add to the growing theory that he may not have been as ordinary as he appeared. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Allen's arrest was the suggestion that he may not have acted alone. Some court documents suggest that the crime scene had a ritualistic or symbolic element, with eerie markings found near the bodies. There have been unconfirmed reports that strange symbols were found carved into nearby trees, and some investigators have speculated that the crime may have been part of a larger, more sinister plot. One of the most widely discussed theories is the possibility that the Delphi murders were linked to a larger online predator network. In the years following the killings, investigators uncovered a disturbing pattern of online catfishing accounts targeting young girls in the area. In particular, a man named Keegan Klein, a known child predator, was found to have been communicating with Libby German through a fake social media profile under the name Anthony Shots.
Friends on social media with the Anthony Shots profile, and that he at least liked or commented on some of her posts. Keegan Klein from Peru, Indiana, about 40 minutes away, admitted he created that fake profile, and I spoke to him from jail.
Klein was arrested in 2020 on multiple counts of child exploitation and possession of child pornography.
Are you aware whether you may have talked to Libby on the 13th?
That's what they said. That's what the police told me.
That you did?
Yeah.
And do you have any recollection of that?
No, not at all.
Did you have anything to do with the murders of Abby or Libby?
Not at all. And I've gave up my DNA, a hair follicle test. I've done everything they wanted me to.
While police have never directly linked Klein to Allen, some theorists believe the possibility of an online grooming connection cannot be ruled out. Did Allen know Klein? Was he part of a larger network of predators? Was the meeting between Allen and the girls premeditated, or was it a crime of opportunity? These questions remain unanswered. Richard Allen remains in custody, facing 2 counts of murder. His trial is expected to be one of the most closely watched legal proceedings in recent history, as the public and the families of Abby and Libby seek long-awaited justice. However, there is still significant mystery surrounding the case. Law enforcement has hinted at the possibility of more arrests in the future, leading to speculation that Allen was not the only person involved. For the people of Delphi, the arrest of Richard Allen provided some relief but not full closure. Until every detail is brought to light and every person involved is held accountable, the town remains haunted by the tragedy that stole 2 young lives and forever changed their sense of safety. The biggest question still remains: was Richard Allen truly the only killer, or is there someone else out there who still holds the final, terrifying truth? Richard Allen remains in custody, awaiting trial on 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of Abigail Abby Williams and Liberty Libby German. The upcoming court proceedings are expected to provide long-awaited answers, but they may also raise even more troubling questions about what truly happened on February 13, 2017. For the past 7 years, law enforcement has kept many details of the case under tight wraps, leading to intense speculation and frustration among the public. Even after Allen's arrest, investigators have continued to remain cautious about releasing certain evidence, fueling theories that the case is far more complex than it initially seemed. Was Richard Allen truly the sole perpetrator, or could there be others involved who have yet to be identified? Did he plan the attack in advance, or was it a crime of opportunity? If Allen acted alone, why did the crime scene reportedly contain unusual elements, including the possible staging of the victims' bodies? Could there be someone else out there, still free, who knows the full, horrifying truth? The small town of Delphi, once known for its friendly community and scenic trails, has become synonymous with one of the most chilling murder mysteries in modern American history. Before that fateful day, Delphi was the kind of place where doors were left unlocked, children rode their bikes without fear, and families gathered at the local park without a second thought. Now it is a town burdened by grief, suspicion, and a lingering sense of unease. For more than 5 years, the identity of the man on the bridge, captured in the infamous Snapchat video, was unknown. Delphi residents feared that he could be living among them, blending into the community, hiding in plain sight. The eventual arrest of Richard Allen only deepened that fear, as many realized they had interacted with him regularly at the local CVS pharmacy.
People who have talked to who shopped at the CVS and dealt with Richard Allen described him as friendly. In fact, after the murders, Libby's aunt went in there to have some pictures printed for Libby's memorial. She said Richard Allen helped her, and at the time, she thought he was helpful and kind.
Parents who once trusted their neighbors now found themselves questioning who else in their town might be capable of such horror. Even with a suspect in custody, Delphi has not found true peace. The unanswered questions surrounding the case continue to weigh heavily on the community. Until every detail is brought to light and every individual responsible is held accountable, the town will remain haunted by the darkness that descended upon it in 2017. One of the most chilling aspects of this case is the persistent belief that Richard Allen may not have acted alone. Law enforcement has not ruled out the possibility of additional arrests, and unsealed court documents have hinted at disturbing details that suggest a broader conspiracy. The crime scene, according to some leaked reports, allegedly displayed ritualistic elements. Some sources claim that symbols were found near the bodies, possibly carved into trees or left as some kind of cryptic message. If true, this raises terrifying questions. Was this crime part of a larger, more sinister plan? Adding to the mystery is the connection to Keegan Klein, the Indiana man behind the Anthony Shots catfishing account that had communicated with Libby German before her murder. Klein, a known child predator, was arrested in 2020 on charges unrelated to the Delphi case, but investigators have questioned him extensively about his potential involvement. Phone records show that Klein's device was used to contact Libby in the days leading up to her death. Some evidence even suggests that someone using Klein's account may have attempted to lure her to the Manhunt High Bridge. Could Richard Allen have been the person Klein was communicating with? Was the meeting between Allen and the girls premeditated? Did Klein or others know about the attack before it happened?
We learn that the evidence shows that Abby and Libby are dropped off at the trails at 1:49 p.m. And we already knew that Libby's video recording that man on the bridge happened at 2:13, just 24 minutes later.
Law enforcement has remained tight-lipped on whether there is a direct link between Klein and Allen, but many believe that this connection could hold the key to unlocking the full truth. If more people were involved, were they part of an underground predator network? Did Abby and Libby unknowingly stumble into a situation far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined? The upcoming trial will be one of the most closely watched in recent history as prosecutors prepare to lay out the full case against Richard Allen. For years, the public has been left in the dark about crucial details, but in the courtroom, forensic evidence, witness testimony, and potentially shocking new revelations may finally shed light on what truly happened on that tragic day.
Probable cause reveals at least 4 witnesses. 3 teenage girls and 1 adult woman saw someone generally matching the description of the person in Libby's video between 1:26 p.m. and 2:13 p.m., the time that Abby and Libby were encountering that man on the bridge.
Those witnesses is seen on surveillance video arriving around 1:46 p.m. And she says she parked her car and then walked out to the bridge where she saw a man standing on the bridge about 50 feet away. She didn't walk onto the bridge. She turned around and walked back in the direction she came. And when she did that, she passed 2 young girls who were walking towards the bridge. And she believes that was Abby and Libby.
Was driving north of the trails that day, and about 2 hours after the abduction, she saw a man in a blue jacket walking in the opposite direction, quote, muddy and bloody.
One of the most pressing questions is whether Allen lured the girls to the Manhunt High Bridge or if the encounter was purely coincidental. Investigators have long suspected that the crime scene was staged in some manner, raising disturbing questions about the killer's motive and whether there were deeper, more sinister elements at play. The unspent bullet casing found near the bodies, directly linked to Allen's firearm, remains one of the most damning pieces of evidence against him.
The most damaging piece of evidence that the state of Indiana has against Richard Allen is the unspent round that cycled through his gun, found just 2 feet away from Libby German. He's either the unluckiest guy in the world, or he was there at the scene when those 2 girls were murdered.
But how it ended up there and what role it played in the crime will likely be examined in court. Another major focus of the trial will be whether Allen had any connection to Keegan Kline and the infamous Anthony Schatz catfishing account, which had been used to communicate with Libby in the days leading up to the murders. Investigators have remained tight-lipped about whether this link is significant, but if evidence suggests that Allen and Kline were connected, it could point to a much larger and more complex crime than previously thought. The possibility of additional suspects remains an unsettling factor in the case, with law enforcement refusing to rule out further arrests. If new evidence emerges that others were involved, the trial could take a shocking turn, unraveling a conspiracy far beyond what anyone initially imagined. For the families of Abby and Libby, the trial represents a long overdue moment of reckoning. They have fought tirelessly for justice, enduring years of uncertainty, false leads, and agonizing silence. A conviction would finally bring a sense of accountability, ensuring that at least one person responsible for their daughter's deaths is held to answer for the horrific crime. However, the lingering possibility that other perpetrators remain at large means that even a guilty verdict may not be the final chapter in this case. The truth behind what happened on the bridge that day is still not fully known, and as the trial unfolds, the world will be watching, waiting for the full story to finally come to light. For the families of Abby and Libby, the pain of losing their daughters has been compounded by the long and agonizing search for answers. Kelsey German, Libby's older sister, has been one of the most vocal advocates for justice.
She was so smart. I think that video and audio definitely keeps people's attention. I think that helps us a lot. I think people see it and they're like, oh my gosh, this 14-year-old girl thought about taking a video of this, and we have this video and we have this audio and we don't have answers. That's crazy. I'm feeling like no answers are coming, and I'm feeling defeated. I say that. I say today is the day, it's coming. It'll get here. We're going to have answers, and just reaffirm myself and say, you know, it's hard, it's frustrating, it's been 5 years, but we're going to have answers eventually, and it's coming.
Tirelessly keeping the case in the public eye. She, along with the families of both victims, has fought to ensure that the investigation remains a priority and that their loved ones are never forgotten. The people of Delphi, too, have endured years of uncertainty and fear. Many residents participated in searches, donated to reward funds, and helped spread awareness about the case. Their town, once a quiet and unassuming place, has become a symbol of both tragedy and resilience. Even now, as the trial approaches, there is an unshakable feeling that this case is not yet over. Until every responsible party is identified and held accountable, true closure will remain out of reach. The haunting image of the man on the bridge, captured forever in Libby's video, has loomed over this case since the beginning. Soon the world may finally learn whether Richard Allen was indeed that man, or if there is an even more sinister truth lurking beneath the surface. Until then, Delphi waits. The families wait. The truth remains just beyond reach. But one thing is certain, Abby and Libby will never be forgotten, and justice must come, no matter how long it takes. The arrest of Richard Allen marked a turning point in a case that had haunted the small town of Delphi for over 5 years. But even with a suspect in custody, many questions remain unanswered. What exactly happened on that bridge in February 2017? Was Allen truly the only one responsible, or did others play a role in the horrific crime? Is there more evidence yet to be uncovered that could provide the full, horrifying picture of what happened to Abby and Libby in their final moments? For the families of the victims, justice is long overdue. They have fought tirelessly to keep the case in the public eye, ensuring that Abby and Libby are never forgotten. But closure still feels distant until every detail is exposed in court and every individual responsible is held accountable. Delphi will remain a town burdened by its darkest day. The once quiet and peaceful community now carries a legacy of tragedy, one that has forever altered the way its residents see their home. As the trial approaches, the world will be watching. The truth behind the Delphi murders will soon come to light, and with it, the hope that justice will finally be served. But for now, the biggest question still lingers. Did law enforcement catch the only monster involved, or is there someone else still out there, holding the final, terrifying secret of what really happened to Abby and Libby? If you found this deep dive into the Delphi murders case insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime investigations, theories, and updates. Your support helps keep these cases alive and ensures that the voices of the victims are never forgotten. Let's continue the conversation in the comments. What do you think really happened that day? Could there be more suspects involved? Let us know your thoughts below.
I'm Jimmy Lee's father, Jimmy J. Lee, the Ole Miss student that's been missing. I'm calling and reaching out to anyone that could have any information to help in his return.
On the morning of July 8, 2022, Jimmy J. Lee stepped out of his apartment in Oxford, Mississippi, dressed in a silver robe, gold cap, and gray slippers. The 20-year-old graduate student was known for his infectious energy, his confidence, and his deep connections with friends and family.
He's real sweet. He don't bother anybody. He's real energetic, like real nice, friendly. He'll talk to anybody. He's kind of the life of the party. Like, he's real sweet. So it's just unfortunate like something like this is happening.
But on this day, he would never return home.
He was such a sweet individual. He is a very sweet individual. He was always outgoing, and the reason we're doing this tonight is because if it was any one of us, he would be here right now. We're looking for you, man. We're gonna find you, and we all really miss you.
Hours turned into days. Jay's phone went silent. His car was found abandoned, his beloved dog Lexus left behind, and his bank cards untouched. Where was Jay? And more importantly, what happened to him? As investigators retraced his last steps, a chilling truth began to unfold. A midnight rendezvous, a cryptic conversation, a hidden relationship. Jay had agreed to meet someone, a man whose identity he had kept secret. A man who, just before Jay arrived at his home, had searched online. How long does it take to strangle someone? What started as a missing persons case soon became a sinister puzzle of deception.
Do you have a motive? Do you have, what kind of proof is there from friends and family this person is missing? How do you know this person isn't missing? How do you know they don't want to be found? What proof is there that this person's even deceased?
Desperation and a secret someone was willing to kill for.
Jay's death is in the silence. No more financial transactions. No more social media posts. No more contacts with his mother, not checking up on her, not on her birthday. No more contact with his dogs. No more anything. The plans for grad school to you, the dreams, all proof that Jay is no longer with us. In that proof, that is how we know that we must seek justice.
But without a body, could the police prove murder?
These cases are unusual but not impossible. You let your imagination run wild. There are many different ways that the state can still prove that somebody is dead, even though they can't produce a body.
And would justice ever be served?
As a legal system, as our police department indicated that they will not take care of our community. They do not care if we die, if our bodies go unfound for 150 days. We cannot feel safe raising families in this community, existing in this community, knowing that our basic civil services do not protect us and do not regard us as equals with other human life.
A young man whose vibrant life was cut short by someone who had everything to lose.
If anyone knows anything or sees anything, say something. Contact the law enforcement. Just tell them what you know. This is my plea that you help find my child. Thank you.
This is the story of Jimmy J. Lee. To understand why Jay's disappearance sent shockwaves through his community, it is important to know who he was. At just 20 years old, he had already accomplished more than many do in a lifetime. He was openly gay in the Deep South, a place where being true to oneself could still come with dangers. Yet Jay never let fear dictate his life. He was deeply involved in LGBTQ+ advocacy, making it his mission to uplift marginalized voices and create spaces where people like him could feel seen and heard. His confidence, intelligence, and passion for social work set him apart. He had completed his undergraduate degree early and was working toward his master's in social work at the University of Mississippi. Jay was not only ambitious, but also deeply loved by those around him. He was incredibly close to his mother, Stephanie Lee, calling her multiple times a day just to check in. His friends described him as someone who could light up any room with his infectious energy and charisma.
He's real sweet. He don't bother anybody. He's real energetic, real nice, friendly. He'll talk to anybody. He's kind of the life of the party. He's real sweet. So it's just unfortunate something like this is happening.
He was known for his bold fashion, unapologetic personality, and deep sense of community. But behind his vibrant life, there were secrets. Secrets that, unknown to him, would put him in grave danger. When Jay missed his usual daily check-ins with his mother, it was an immediate cause for concern. At first, Stephanie assumed he was simply busy, but as the hours passed with no response, a gnawing sense of dread set in. Jay was active on social media until around 6 in the morning, but then, suddenly, all activity stopped. He had never gone this long without reaching out, especially not to his mother. Even more alarming, his beloved Pomeranian, Lexus, was still in his apartment. Jay never went anywhere without his dog, and the fact that he had left her behind only deepened the concern. As the day wore on, panic gripped those who knew him best. His friends called him repeatedly, but there was no answer. His mother sent text after text, but nothing came back. Calls to his phone went straight to voicemail. Then came the first major clue. Jay's car, a distinctive black Ford Fusion with a gold racing stripe, was found abandoned at the Mollybar Trails apartment complex, located just half a mile from his home. Investigators combed through the vehicle, discovering his bank cards and keyring still inside. But his phone was missing. More disturbingly, there was no sign of Jay. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. From the moment Jay Lee was reported missing, investigators faced a troubling lack of physical evidence. There was no sign of forced entry at his apartment, no reports of a struggle, and no clear leads. His abandoned car at the Mollybar Trails apartment complex gave them a starting point, but it was what they found in his digital footprint that would lead them to a suspect. Authorities first obtained surveillance footage from Jay's apartment complex, Campus Walk. The footage showed him leaving his unit at 5:58 a.m. on July 8, 2022. He was wearing a silver robe, gold cap, and gray slippers, clothing that suggested he was stepping out briefly, not planning to be gone for long. The footage did not show anyone else entering or exiting his apartment around that time. However, what concerned investigators most was that Jay had taken nothing with him. Not his phone, not his wallet, not even his dog, Lexus. This was completely out of character for him. Investigators then turned to Jay's phone records and social media activity. They quickly realized that his iPhone was missing, making it impossible to track him using GPS. However, Jay's iCloud account contained something more valuable: his recent messages and online activity. When detectives reviewed his last known conversations, they discovered something deeply unsettling. Just before Jay disappeared, he had been messaging someone on Snapchat, an account with the username redeye24. The conversation, which began at 5:17 a.m. and continued until 6:03 a.m., raised immediate red flags. Jay seemed wary and hesitant about meeting this person. At one point, he even accused them of trying to lure him into a dangerous situation, sending a message that read, "Yeah, now it seems like you're just trying to lure me over there to beat my ass or something." The other person reassured him, claiming he had nothing to worry about. Eventually, Jay seemed convinced and changed his mind about meeting up. His final message, sent at 6:03 a.m., was chilling in its simplicity. "Open it." After that, his phone went completely silent. Investigators knew that Snapchat messages disappear after they are read, making it difficult to retrieve additional details from their conversation. However, they were able to trace the email associated with the redeye24 account. The email belonged to a University of Mississippi graduate named Timothy Harrington Jr. When police dug deeper into Timothy's internet history, they found something even more chilling. Just minutes before Jay arrived at his apartment, Timothy had searched online. How long does it take to strangle someone?
You will see how the police traced Jay to that apartment. You will see that when Jay gets there, he lets Timothy know he's there. But right before Jay gets to his apartment, when he's headed over, right before he gets there, just mere minutes, Timothy searches how long does it take to strangle someone. The evidence will further show that Jay never left that apartment on his own.
This wasn't just a random curiosity. The timing suggested it was premeditated. Investigators now had strong reason to believe that Timothy had lured Jay to his apartment under false pretenses, knowing exactly what he planned to do. But the digital evidence wasn't all they had. Authorities began tracking Timothy's movements on July 8th, and what they found painted an even darker picture. At 7:30 a.m., just 90 minutes after Jay was last seen, his car was caught on the surveillance footage leaving Timothy's apartment complex. However, the driver was not clearly visible. Timothy denied driving it, but investigators weren't convinced. At 8 a.m., Timothy was captured on Walmart security footage. He was seen walking through the store, examining large trash bins before purchasing a roll of duct tape. On its own, this purchase may not have raised suspicions, but given the context of the case, it was an ominous sign. By 10 a.m., Timothy had switched vehicles, picking up a box truck he used for his moving business. He then drove to his parents' house in Grenada, where he retrieved a shovel and a wheelbarrow. Investigators believed he had used these tools to dispose of Jay's body. At 2 p.m., Timothy returned to the area, but this time something was different. He was wearing different shoes than he had been in the morning. Surveillance footage captured him unloading the wheelbarrow at his parents' home. Another major piece of the puzzle was Jay's car. The black Ford Fusion, with its distinctive gold stripe, had been abandoned at Molly Bartrell's apartments, just half a mile from Timothy's apartment. When investigators reviewed security footage from the entrance of the complex, Jay's car was seen arriving at 7:25 a.m. 9 minutes later, at 7:34 a.m., a man in black shorts and a gray hoodie was seen jogging away from the parking lot. Investigators believed this was Timothy Harrington. Inside Jay's car, police found his credit and debit cards, key ring, and other personal belongings. The only thing missing was his phone. The car's interior revealed no signs of a struggle, but authorities were troubled by how it was parked. It was left haphazardly over a curb, with its front wheels turned sharply to the left, suggesting it had been parked in a hurry. When questioned about his whereabouts that morning, Timothy initially denied any recent contact with Jay. However, when confronted with the Snapchat messages, he changed his story. He admitted they had met that morning, but insisted that Jay had left on his own. With no clear signs of a struggle, no body, and no direct evidence, police had to build their case using digital records and circumstantial evidence. But Timothy's own inconsistent statements only made him look more guilty. During their second interview with him, Timothy amended his story again, now admitting that he and Jay had been sexually involved, but still maintaining that he had nothing to do with Jay's disappearance. His sudden willingness to acknowledge their relationship raised further questions. Was he afraid that Jay would expose the truth? Had the fear of being outed driven him to murder? The most damning evidence, however, was his web searches. Beyond the search about strangulation, Timothy had searched for news updates on Jay's disappearance before it was even widely reported. On July 10th, just 2 days after Jay vanished, Timothy Googled Molly Bar Apartments, the same location where Jay's car was later found. At the time of his search, police had not publicly disclosed this detail. How did Timothy know? By July 11th, Timothy was repeatedly searching for updates on Oxford MS Police, Find Jimmy Lee, and missing University of Mississippi student. His obsessive interest in the case was not the behavior of an innocent man. With all the evidence at hand, investigators formed a timeline of what they believed had happened. They theorized that Timothy had lured Jay to his apartment that morning under false pretenses, possibly promising to make up for an earlier argument. Once Jay arrived, something went terribly wrong. Whether it was a heated argument, a moment of panic, or a premeditated attack, Timothy acted violently. The strangulation search suggested that Jay had been killed in Timothy's apartment. The duct tape purchase, the change in vehicles, and the retrieval of a shovel pointed to a plan to dispose of the body. The abandoned car at Molly Bar Apartments seemed like a calculated move to throw off investigators. While authorities still lacked a body, they believed they had enough evidence to charge Timothy. After obtaining a search warrant for his apartment, investigators used cadaver dogs inside the unit. The dogs alerted to certain areas, suggesting possible human remains had been there at some point. On July 22, 2022, Timothy Harrington was arrested and charged with murder. But without a body, would the case hold up in court? The lack of physical evidence made it difficult for prosecutors to prove exactly how Jay had died. With only circumstantial evidence in digital footprints, the case hinged on whether a jury would convict without a body. What happened next? A shocking mistrial, a controversial decision, and 2 years later, a breakthrough that changed everything. On the surface, Timothy Harrington Jr. seemed like the last person anyone would suspect of being involved in something so sinister. He came from a prominent, well-respected family with deep ties to the local community. His grandfather was a pastor, and he had built a reputation as a polite and well-mannered young man. After graduating from the University of Mississippi, he had started a moving business with a friend and appeared to be on a steady path toward success. But behind closed doors, Timothy was living a double life. He and Jay had been involved in a secret romantic relationship, something Timothy had worked desperately to keep hidden. Unlike Jay, who was proud of his identity, Timothy was terrified of being exposed. He was deeply closeted, fearful of how his family and community would react if they learned the truth. Investigators began to wonder, had Jay threatened to reveal their relationship? Had Timothy lured him to his apartment, desperate to keep his secret safe at any cost? The mounting evidence suggested one chilling conclusion: yes. As investigators dug deeper, a pattern of suspicious behavior emerged. Surveillance footage, phone records, and witness accounts painted a damning picture of what had happened on the morning Jay disappeared. At 6 a.m., Jay arrived at Timothy's apartment. By 7:30 a.m., Jay's car was seen leaving the complex, but the driver was not clearly visible. Timothy, however, denied any involvement. At 8 a.m., security cameras captured him at a local Walmart, browsing through large garbage bins before purchasing a roll of duct tape. Later that day, Timothy switched vehicles and drove to his parents' home in Grenada. There, he retrieved a shovel and a wheelbarrow. Authorities believed he had used them to dispose of Jay's body. At 2 p.m., he returned to the area, this time wearing different shoes. Every move he made raised more questions. Investigators were convinced they had their man, and with this mountain of circumstantial evidence, Timothy was arrested and charged with murder. But the prosecution had one major obstacle: there was no body. When the trial of Timothy Harrington Jr. began, it immediately became one of the most controversial and closely watched cases in Oxford, Mississippi. Prosecutors faced a daunting challenge. They had no body, no murder weapon, and no direct forensic evidence tying Timothy to Jay's disappearance.
There's no weapon, there is no blood. How do we know there's been a murder committed? There's nobody, there's no gunshots heard. I mean, nobody has seen a struggle or heard of a struggle. So how do we know that someone is dead? And how do they know that Timothy Harrington did it?
What they did have was a mountain of circumstantial evidence, suspicious behavior, and a damning digital trail. The prosecution's case rested on several key arguments. They argued that Timothy had a clear motive: his fear of being outed. Jay was openly gay, while Timothy had spent his life hiding his sexuality from family and friends. They presented evidence that suggested Jay had threatened to expose their relationship, potentially leading to Timothy's rage-fueled attack. The jury was shown Snapchat messages from the morning Jay disappeared, in which Jay appeared hesitant about meeting Timothy, but ultimately agreed. The last message Jay ever sent, "Open it," was displayed in court, followed by the eerie silence that came after. Prosecutors laid out Timothy's suspicious movements on July 8th, highlighting his Google search, "How long does it take to strangle someone?" made just before Jay arrived at his apartment. They showed surveillance footage of Timothy at Walmart purchasing duct tape, his abandoned car switch, and the retrieval of a shovel and wheelbarrow from his parents' home. They argued that Timothy had planned to dispose of Jay's body, which explained why it had never been found. The most chilling evidence was Timothy's own internet search history. In the days following Jay's disappearance, Timothy had repeatedly Googled phrases such as "Find Jimmy Lee," "Molly Bar Apartments Police," and "Oxford MS Missing Person." What made these searches damning was that police had not yet disclosed that Jay's car was found at Molly Bar Apartments, meaning Timothy knew a detail about the case that he should have had no way of knowing. The prosecution also called cadaver dog handlers to the stand. They testified that dogs had alerted to human decomposition inside Timothy's apartment, particularly in the bedroom and near a closet. While this was not definitive proof of murder, it suggested that Jay's body had been inside Timothy's apartment at some point. The prosecution closed their argument with a haunting statement. If Jay Lee was still alive, he would have reached out to his mother, he would have checked in with his friends, he would not have abandoned his dog, his car, his life. He is dead, and the only person responsible is sitting in this courtroom. Timothy Harrington's defense team focused on one crucial weakness in the prosecution's case: there was no body. Without a body, they argued, the state could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Jay had been murdered at all. The defense painted an alternate theory. Jay had a history of late-night meetups and could have left Timothy's apartment alive that morning.
Police conduct prior to this night and the manner in which he conducted himself. I'm not passing judgment on the young man. Those are facts. things that occurred in his life, it was not unusual for him to be going out in the middle of the night. I think evidence is going to show. I didn't make these things up.
They suggested that Jay had willingly gone to meet someone else, someone who could have harmed him. They pointed out that there were no witnesses who saw Timothy harming Jay and that no DNA, blood, or physical evidence had been found tying Timothy to a murder.
Blood, urine, trace evidence whatsoever. They don't have one scintilla that means anything in legal terms. First of all, that a death occurred in Lafayette County if it did occur. Second of all, any trace evidence in his apartment, zero. I'm not saying speculatively, it is their proof that a crime was ever committed inside our client's apartment, or in the parking lot, or in his car, or in Jalen's car. Nowhere.
They also attempted to explain away the suspicious search history, claiming that Timothy had been curious about missing person cases and strangulation out of fear, not guilt. They suggested that the Google searches about Jay's disappearance were simply those of an innocent man following a case that involved someone he knew. In an effort to dismantle the prosecution's timeline, they argued that Jay's car leaving the apartment complex at 7:30 a.m. did not prove Timothy was driving it. They claimed that another unknown individual could have taken Jay's car and abandoned it at Molly Bar Apartments. One of the most controversial moments in the trial came when Timothy's attorneys accused Jay of leading a reckless lifestyle, implying that he could have met someone dangerous outside of his relationship with Timothy. The insinuation was widely criticized as an attempt to discredit Jay and shift blame away from their client. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for several days. While the prosecution had presented a strong circumstantial case, the lack of a body left just enough room for doubt. The jurors reviewed the digital evidence, rewatched surveillance footage, and discussed whether the case met the threshold of beyond a reasonable doubt. When the final vote was cast, the jury stood at 11-1 in favor of conviction. But because one juror refused to convict without a body, a mistrial was declared. The courtroom fell silent as the decision was announced. Jay's family, who had sat through the entire trial reliving their worst nightmare, was devastated. Timothy, who had spent the trial stone-faced and silent, was led out of the courtroom, knowing he had narrowly escaped a murder conviction. With the mistrial, Timothy Harrington was released from custody, walking out of the courtroom a free man. But for Jay's family, the fight was far from over. They vowed to seek justice, refusing to let their son's case fade away. Stephanie Lee, Jay's mother, took to social media writing, "We will not stop until justice is served. My son's life mattered." The case continued to make headlines, sparking national conversations about the challenges of prosecuting murder cases without a body. Many legal experts debated whether prosecutors should have pursued a murder conviction or a lesser charge that could have secured a conviction. For months, the Oxford community lived with the unsettling reality that Timothy Harrington had walked free, despite overwhelming circumstantial evidence against him. But everything changed in February 2025, when a breakthrough shattered the defense's main argument and left no room for doubt. On February 3, 2025, nearly 2.5 years after Jay vanished, a group of deer hunters in Carroll County stumbled upon human remains at an illegal dumping site. The remains were badly decomposed, but enough forensic evidence remained to make a positive identification. 2 days later, authorities confirmed the worst. The remains belonged to Jimmy J. Lee. With the discovery of Jay's body, the entire case was reignited. Prosecutors wasted no time in re-indicting Timothy Harrington, this time charging him with capital murder and tampering with evidence. The lack of a body had been the greatest weakness in the first trial, but now that problem was gone. The second trial, a case stronger than ever. With the discovery of Jay's remains, prosecutors now had the strongest case yet against Timothy. Forensic analysis determined that Jay's body showed signs of strangulation, directly confirming what investigators had suspected all along. The second trial would not hinge on circumstantial evidence alone. It would be supported by physical proof of Jay's death. Now the stakes were higher than ever. This time, prosecutors were considering the death penalty. Jay Lee had been a young man full of life, love, and ambition, and someone had taken that away from him. The first trial may have failed to bring justice, but with his body finally found, there would be no more loopholes, no more doubt, and no more hiding behind a lack of evidence. As Timothy Harrington awaited his second trial, the question remained, would justice finally be served? For over 2 years, Jay's family lived in agony, holding on to hope but fearing the worst. Then, in February 2025, a breakthrough changed everything. A group of deer hunters in Carroll County, about an hour and a half from Oxford, stumbled upon human remains at an illegal dumping site. Investigators were called in, and 2 days later, forensic analysis confirmed the devastating news. Jay had finally been found. His body had been hidden for over 2 years, but now the search was over. With this discovery, prosecutors re-indicted Timothy Harrington for capital murder, this time with an additional charge of tampering with evidence. The lack of a body had been the defense's greatest advantage in the first trial. Now, that advantage was gone. Jay Lee was more than a victim of a crime. He was a young man full of promise, passion, and love. He had dedicated his life to helping others, but someone else's fear, shame, and desperation to keep a secret had cost him his life. Timothy Harrington had walked free once, but with new charges filed and Jay's remains discovered, the fight for justice was far from over. As the second trial looms, the stakes are higher than ever. This time, prosecutors are considering seeking the death penalty. With undeniable proof that Jay was murdered, the question remains, will justice finally be served?
My sister is kind and quirky and caring and my best friend.
Friday, March the 31st, 2023. A cool spring morning in Winona, Minnesota. The day started like any other for 26-year-old Madeline Kingsbury, a devoted mother, a hardworking professional, and a woman quietly preparing for a new chapter in her life. By 8 a.m., she and her longtime partner, Adam Fravel, dropped off their 2 young children at daycare. Security cameras captured her dark blue Chrysler Town and country minivan pulling back into the driveway shortly after. And then, she was gone.
The Fillmore County community and surrounding areas are coming together to bring her home.
When's the last time you heard from her or anything like that?
This morning, when I last heard from her.
I hugged her behind her and I said, you don't want to end up like that in between them, do you? And I know that was really bad.
At 8:20 p.m., the Winona Police Department was called and an investigation was launched. When officers arrived at her home, they found no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no indication that Maddie had left willingly. Even more unsettling, her phone, wallet, ID, and keys were all inside. Her minivan was still parked outside. Whatever had happened to Maddie had happened fast. For more than 2 months, search teams combed the fields, rivers, and wooded areas surrounding Winona. Thousands of volunteers joined the effort, but the only thing they found was silence. Then on June 7th, 2023, that silence was shattered. Roughly 46 miles south of Winona, along a remote stretch of highway in Fillmore County, human remains were discovered in a wooded area near the Mississippi River. The condition of the body suggested it had been there for weeks, exposed to the elements, hidden from sight. Investigators worked quickly, but deep down, everyone feared what they already knew. 2 days later, on June 9, 2023, the worst was confirmed. The remains belonged to Madeline Kingsbury. The missing mother, the woman whose face had become a haunting reminder of unresolved tragedy, had been found. But the discovery only led to more chilling questions. Who put her there? When? Why? As the investigation continued, the walls began closing in on one man.
Please help us find Madeline. The children need their mother. We need our daughter, our sister, our aunt, and our best friend back.
Madeline Kingsbury was born on June 1, 1996, in Winona, Minnesota. The youngest of 3 siblings, she grew up in a close-knit and loving family. Described as smart, kind, and full of life, Maddie had a sharp sense of humor and a strong work ethic that set her apart from an early age. She pursued her passion for public health at Winona State University, later securing a prestigious role at the Mayo Clinic as a clinical research coordinator. Ambitious and driven, she was also working toward a master's degree in public health administration to advance her career. But above all, Maddie was a devoted mother. Her 5-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son were her world. She was hands-on, nurturing, and determined to give them a bright future. Despite balancing work, school, and motherhood, she always put her children first. However, behind closed doors, Maddie's relationship with Adam Fravel, the father of her children, was far from perfect. Friends and family later revealed that Adam was controlling, manipulative, and emotionally abusive. Maddie had secretly begun searching for a new home, planning to leave him and start fresh. But she never got the chance. Friday, March 31st, 2023, started out as a normal morning. Maddie and Adam got up early, got their kids dressed, and headed out the door. By 8 a.m., they dropped the children off at daycare together. Security footage captured them exiting the minivan, Maddie standing beside the vehicle as Adam walked the children inside. At 8:15 a.m., Maddie's phone sent what would be her final text message. It was nothing out of the ordinary, just a routine response. But from that moment on, Maddie's voice would go silent. According to Adam, he and Maddie returned home together. He claimed she told him she had a work meeting and that she planned to head to Rochester for the day. But by 10 a.m., Adam says she was simply gone. His version of events was simple. Maddie had left on her own. But there was one glaring problem. Her phone, wallet, keys, and ID were all still inside the house. Her car was still parked in the driveway. How could she have left with no means of transportation? That evening, after repeated unanswered calls, Maddie's family contacted the Winona Police Department. Officers arrived at her home and conducted a welfare check. They knocked. They searched. But there was no sign of Maddie, no sign of where she could have gone. And so the search for Madeline Kingsbury began.
I'm sure you're aware of what's all going on. Some people called about Madeline, a little concerned, and we're just trying to get an idea of where she might be.
Yes.
When's the last time you heard from her or anything like that?
Yeah, so this morning when I last heard from her, so that's why personally I wasn't very concerned yet.
What time about was that?
Probably around 10.
But was she supposed to pick up the children today?
Yes, usually, so we usually do drop-offs and pickups together. And this morning we both did the drop-off, and I couldn't get any response from her since before 10 or whatever. And I tried calling her. We usually pick up the kids around 4:15. And I tried calling her a bunch of times, I think 3:30 and like 3:45 and 4. And I didn't get any response, so I just picked up the kids myself.
You know anybody in town she might be with? Any clubs or organizations she's affiliated with?
Not clubs or anything.
Does she do it like a weekly thing, like a girls' night out or anything like that, usually?
No, nothing like that.
Anywhere else in town you think she might be?
At this time at night, no.
Does she ever go to the bars at all?
No, we're not drinkers at all.
From the start, investigators zeroed in on Adam Fravel. He was the last person to see Maddie alive. His story was inconsistent, his behavior was unusual, and something about his timeline didn't add up.
I left the house around 10 to bring some stuff down to my parents. And then when I came back home, I noticed that my car was still there. She was going to take my car to work today, and my car was still there. And she wasn't there. That's the last I saw from her. And then I tried texting her, tried calling her, and I haven't heard anything since.
And you had the van today, correct?
Yep.
And
Yep, I was hauling stuff down to my parents.
Gotcha. And your car was still there, and you now have your car, correct?
Correct.
So does she usually ride with anybody to work, or is there anybody she could be with right now?
She doesn't usually ride with anybody to work, but she has before. She has a couple coworkers in the know. So that's what I figured she did, but I don't know.
Adam told police that after Maddie left, he had taken her minivan to move some of his belongings to a storage unit. He said he returned home around 11:30 a.m., found the house empty, and assumed Maddie had gone to work. But what Adam didn't expect was that police would uncover surveillance footage that told a very different story. At 9:45 a.m., security cameras captured Adam switching the license plates on Maddie's minivan. It was a strange, calculated move, one that suggested he was trying to make the vehicle unrecognizable. Why would someone do that unless they had something to hide? Police also discovered a 45-minute gap in Adam's whereabouts that morning, a window of time when his location could not be accounted for. And when authorities searched Maddie's home, they found no evidence that she had left willingly, no packed bags, no travel plans, just a mother who had seemingly vanished into thin air.
Are you any closer to finding a suspect or person of interest?
Again, it's open and active. The leads that are coming in is unbelievable. We are actually getting hundreds of them. We have a lot of information that we're trying to process right now to help do that. So it continues to be open and active.
As the investigation deepened, police began to uncover a history of abuse. Friends and family came forward, revealing that Adam had threatened Maddie before. He had once pinned her down and told her she would end up like Gabby Petito if she didn't listen. Maddie had confided in a friend, texting, "It wasn't funny. That's what sealed it for me." She was afraid of him. The evidence was piling up, but without a body, police couldn't yet make an arrest. All they could do was wait. For more than 2 months, search teams combed through fields, rivers, and wooded areas, hoping to find Maddie. Thousands of volunteers joined the effort, but there was nothing. Then on June 7, 2023, police received a tip. A discovery had been made. Human remains were found near a wooded area in Fillmore County, roughly 46 miles from Maddie's home. The location was strategic, hidden, far from immediate suspicion, but law enforcement had been watching Adam's movements for weeks. They knew this area was familiar to him, and when the forensic results came in, the worst was confirmed. The remains belonged to Madeline Kingsbury.
I'll ask again, do you know where Maddie is? Did you have anything to do with her disappearance?
I do not.
Okay. I just think you're dealing with a lot here. I think you've been dealing with a lot here. You have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old together. So I think something happened in that apartment.
Well, from you guys' perspective, why would I hurt or make the mother of my children disappear?
Because you're pissed.
I don't know that. Maybe it just happened. I don't know, but more happened, Adam. And I'm not saying that on a whim. I'm saying that based on the last 30 hours that we've spent on this case. Adam, you gotta live too. And I just think you're holding back here. You know more.
No, I don't. I don't know. Maddie and I do not have any history of violence besides emotional or
Unfortunately,
verbal.
that's not what I heard
But
either.
we've never laid hands on each other or anything like that. So why someone would say that, I don't know. I know I can tell you.
I don't. I'm struggling because you guys went home. Her
I want to believe
jacket
you,
was
Adam.
in the house. Her bag for work was there.
Where was her phone? Did you guys ever find her phone?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So why would she leave all that behind? And no vehicle is gone, and her jacket is there. I'm stuck there, and then you leave a couple hours later, and I'm just having a hard time with it.
Adam, do you know that there's like some zip ties or something in the back of your van?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I think we have that like in the storage compartment or something like that back there, where she has other materials that.
Okay.
It's just stuff that we keep in the van.
Okay. What do you use those for?
I don't know why I didn't put those there.
Okay.
It probably wasn't something. Oh, maybe because a couple weekends ago she took the van up to her dad's. Her dad put a new oil pan. She, some kind of major repair he did on the engine. And I know he had to zip tie something. Maddie mentioned he had to zip tie some vacuum hoses or something together. Maybe that's what it was from. But I've never personally.
Timeline is off, and these text messages where you're kind of suddenly worried about her, they don't make sense, and they almost seem like they're intentional. They almost seem like they're breadcrumbs that you knew the police would pick up.
Okay.
And I'm trying to work with you here. Again,
I'm just saying now I'm not going to say much, because now my wall is up, and I'm probably going to have to get a lawyer, because I'm feeling really confused.
Okay.
I mean, you can ask what you want, and I'll answer. I'm just saying I'm putting up my defense now. I've been working with you guys completely, but now I'm getting accused of stuff, so
All I can say to that is we wouldn't do another job.
No, I did that too. So.
Only because I'll reiterate again, you were the last one to have seen her. You were the last one to be in the house at the time to be able to own and access to the house. You only had access to her cars. You went home with her. And so that's why. That's why. There's that. I don't know.
I'm just as confused as you guys, you know what I mean? Like, and I know, I get it, I'm a suspect, you know, we recently broke up and everything, I get it. But I'm completely compliant. I mean, right?
Yeah, you've been great. You've been cooperative, absolutely. And I appreciate that.
Whatever you guys
Thank you
need.
for that. I'm struggling with where she went.
I know.
You're infatuated with the Gabby Petito story, your own words.
Yeah, I was, yeah. When like the manhunt stuff was going on.
My biggest fear right now is that this is...
No, I get it.
This is mimicking that case.
I get it.
And the guy that's infatuated that case is sitting right in front of me. And he's doing a really good job keeping it together, and I'm not buying it. And I'm not... I just want to find her.
No.
For your kids. Like I said, Adam, your own admission, you're infatuated with the Gabby Petito story. This case is rearing some eerily similar circumstances. She also said that you made a commentary that if she doesn't listen, that she's going to end up like Gabby Petito. That's what she told several people, and we interviewed those people, and they told us that individually, not having talked with each other.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So this was a it's gonna sound so bad. This was when that was going down. When I don't know when this Gabby Petito thing happened again in 20 or something down whatever. But I just remember I was infatuated with the case. It was a man with me. I was just into the news on it. And I can remember it very vividly. I went outside. I think I put trash outside or something. I came back in, and then I came up behind her and I hugged her. And it was so stupid. I was just trying to make a joke, but I hugged her behind her and I said, "You don't end up like Gabby Petito, do you?" And I know that was really bad. That was a really stupid joke, but it was honestly just a joke in the moment, and inappropriate. But yeah, this was when that was happening. Nothing like that recently. No, this was when that case was going on.
Were you guys joking around that day? Were you not getting along that day? What was it like that day?
No, like I said, it was literally just a joke, and it was just, it's, you know.
Yeah, it's not a very good joke.
I know, and it makes me look bad. I get that. That's the truth. I don't know what else to say.
I appreciate explaining this.
Yeah, right. Because this happened. It was at the townhouse, in townhouse. I don't remember what year.
When she told the other people, she said it occurred during a time when you guys were a possible breakup, and that's when you made that statement.
I won't say that.
Well, that's what she's saying to her friends.
Okay.
And you said she doesn't lie, and it sounds like she tells you to your face that she's seeing someone new. So
what?
So I mean, that's a pretty interesting statement that she's
No,
making, and I'm trying to learn about her through her words to other people, through her phone, through her coworkers, through her friends, through her family, through you. And I can tell you that it appears that this relationship was not going super well, to the point that she's wanting to get out of there as soon as possible.
I would agree with the last thing you just said about wanting to get out of there as soon as possible, because if that was the case, it would have happened a while ago.
On June 9th, 2023, police moved in. Adam Fravel was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The man who had tried to deceive investigators, the man who had acted indifferent while Maddie's family searched for her, was now in handcuffs.
My sister Madeline, who's been missing since March 31st of this year from Winona, her ex, Adam Fravel, has officially been arrested. Finally, he's been arrested. He is at Winona County Jail right now. And I'm not ready to say a lot right now. We're kind of waiting on some more information right now. But yes, I can confirm he has been arrested.
The truth was finally coming to light. With Maddie's remains recovered and the evidence against Adam Fravel mounting, prosecutors moved forward with charges of second-degree murder. The courtroom was tense as the case unfolded, with Maddie's family and friends watching closely, determined to see justice served. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of Maddie's final hours. They argued that Adam had killed Maddie in a fit of rage, fearing that she was about to leave him. Evidence showed that after the daycare drop-off, Maddie never left the house alive. Instead, Adam used her own minivan to dispose of her body, driving 46 miles to Fillmore County, where she was later found buried in a remote wooded area. The prosecution presented a damning collection of evidence. Adam's contradictory statements, surveillance footage of him switching license plates, and digital forensic data tracking his movements to and from the disposal site. Testimonies from friends and family detailed Adam's violent tendencies and disturbing threats, including the time he pinned Maddie down and told her she would end up like Gabby Petito. In contrast, Adam's defense team struggled to counter the prosecution's overwhelming case. He pleaded not guilty, denying any involvement in Maddie's death. But his lack of cooperation, refusal to assist in the search, and cold, emotionless demeanor in court only further cemented suspicions against him. Throughout the trial, Maddie's family remained steadfast, showing unwavering strength as they listened to the heartbreaking details of her final moments. They were no longer just grieving loved ones, they were advocates for justice. After weeks of testimony, evidence, and deliberation, the verdict was read.
Well, that jury coming back a little bit after 11 o'clock today to deliver these verdicts on 4 counts. There's first-degree murder, there's 2 counts of that, and then 2 counts of second-degree murder. In the end, for sentencing, it really only matters about sentencing on the top count here. But, you know, this is something that the prosecution said was very much a case about digital evidence, something you didn't see 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So much about location data and text messages. A lot of the text messages that really illustrated a volatile relationship between Adam Fravel and Maddie Kingsbury. And afterwards, her family and her friends all expressed the importance they feel of the work of using this case to help women who are victims of domestic abuse.
The weight of the truth had prevailed, and Adam Fravel was finally held accountable for taking Maddie's life. For Maddie's family, it was a step toward closure. But the pain of losing her would never fade. Madeline Kingsbury's life was stolen far too soon, but her story does not end with her tragic death. She was more than a victim. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a woman with dreams and ambitions. She was loved by many, and her impact on those who knew her will never fade. While her family found some relief in seeing Adam Fravel convicted, their fight is not over. Justice for Maddie is not just about a guilty verdict. It's about making sure no one else suffers the same fate. In the wake of her murder, Maddie's family has become advocates for domestic violence awareness and missing persons cases. They have used their voices to shed light on the warning signs of abusive relationships, urging people to recognize when a loved one may be in danger.
When you think of her story of, leaving her kids at the daycare, ready to go to work, a mom who loves her children, it just resonates with everyone. And people want to know what happened to her.
They are fighting for better protections for victims of coercive control and intimate partner violence, ensuring that others don't feel as trapped as Maddie did. Her story has sparked conversations nationwide, reminding people that domestic violence doesn't always look the way we expect, that sometimes the most dangerous relationships are the ones hidden behind closed doors, that victims like Maddie don't always get a second chance to escape, and that as a society, we must do more to support those who feel they have nowhere to turn. Though her children will grow up without their mother, they will grow up knowing who she was, how deeply she loved them, and how hard she fought to give them a better life. Maddie's family, friends, and supporters will ensure that her memory lives on, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a symbol of strength, resilience, and the urgent need for change. Madeline Kingsbury was more than just a headline. She was a fighter. She was a mother. She was a light that should never have been dimmed. And as long as her name is spoken, as long as her story is told, she will never be forgotten. This is for Maddie. This is for justice. This is for every woman who never got the chance to escape. If you found Maddie's story impactful, please like, share, and subscribe to help raise awareness for victims of domestic violence. Every voice matters. Every story deserves to be told.
Since we don't communicate with him and his family, all we can really go off of is kind of what they say on social media. And it's mostly, they're upset that they're maybe not involved in certain things, but, they haven't been particularly, they haven't planned anything of their own, I guess I'll say. Any vigils or searches or get-togethers, anything like that.